Part 1, excerpt from the diary. Siberian steppe, Lake Baikal. A soul appears before death comes. It's a law I've witnessed hundreds of times. But today, on the frozen shore of Lake Baikal, that law was broken. My name is Alexei Volkov, and I see what others cannot. It's not a gift, as many mistakenly believe, it's a curse. My breath froze into white clouds in the frigid air. The temperature plummeted below -30°C, and the high winds howled through the bare birch trees like the screams of hungry spirits. 40 years of living with this ability, and I still haven't grown accustomed to the chilling sensation when a soul passes by. I am not a casual adventurer. 15 years ago, after leaving the Moscow Institute of Paranormal Phenomena with despair and a deeply buried secret in my heart, I dedicated my life to tracking the traces of death. I journey to places where death leaves its deepest imprint, places where the boundary between our world and the other world is as thin as paper. But today was different. Dr. Sokolov had called me from the Listvianka research station. His voice trembled over the satellite phone. "Volkov, you must come here. We found something. A person." "Living or dead?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Dead, but not like other corpses. She's still bleeding, even though she's been frozen for a long time." I packed my bags within an hour. Now, standing before the discovered body, I understood why Sokolov couldn't describe it over the phone. No words could capture this sight. The girl lay on the snow, her long black hair spread out like an eerie halo. The fur clothing she wore didn't belong to this era. Pieces of sheepskin and fur were sewn with animal sinews, adorned with small bones and teeth as decorations. The design could be thousands of years old. But the strangest thing wasn't her attire. It was the condition of her body. Blood, that was the first thing I noticed. Blood still seeped from her eye sockets, frozen into dark red streaks on her cheeks. The blood hadn't frozen in the usual way. It remained liquid beneath a thin layer of ice, as if time itself had been bent here. "We checked her body temperature," Sokolov whispered beside me, his breath turning to steam. "The thermometer couldn't get a reading, just an error." "How long has she been dead?" I asked, knowing the answer would be unsatisfactory. "According to preliminary carbon analysis of her clothing, at least 4,000 years. I nodded, showing no surprise. The anomaly wasn't the body's age, but its presence. A 4,000-year-old body doesn't bleed. But as I knelt beside the girl, I felt something even stranger. There was no soul here. With every death, there's always a trace, an echo, an imprint of the departed soul. But this girl was empty, as if her soul had been violently torn from her body. "Did you move her?" I asked. "No, we didn't dare," Sokolov shook his head. "Alexei, there's one more thing." He pointed to a wound on the girl's chest. Through the torn fur, I could see a gaping hole exactly where her heart should be. Not a stab wound or a bullet wound. It looked as if the heart had been ripped out from the inside. "Do you see it?" Sokolov trembled, pointing to the edge of the wound. "Those marks." I squinted. Around the wound were black streaks, not dried blood or necrosis. They spread like a spiderweb, like abnormal black veins running under the skin. "The blood, what kind of blood is it?" I asked. "It's not human blood," Sokolov said. "In fact, we can't identify it. It has DNA, but not the DNA of any known creature." A familiar headache began to throb. It always happened when I was too close to things like this. I pressed my temples, trying to suppress the pain. "Leave me alone with her," I said. Sokolov nodded, a look of gratitude evident on his face. He was a scientist, not someone who dealt with things beyond science. As his footsteps faded, I closed my eyes and focused. My empathic ability wasn't something I could switch on and off like a light, but I had learned to attune it over time. I placed my hand on the girl's frozen forehead, letting memories flood in. "Nothing," I frowned. I focused harder. Still nothing. This had never happened before. There were always memories, even a fleeting image, an emotion, a whisper. But this girl was empty, like a discarded shell. I opened my eyes, staring at her beautiful, terrifying face. Pale skin beneath the thin ice, dark red blood still seeping from her eyes, defying natural laws. And then I saw it, a small character carved into the rim of the girl's right ear. I had to lean very close to see it clearly, an old Slavic symbol. "Rana," the symbol of sacrifice. A cold shiver ran down my spine, not from the temperature. It was primal fear, the instinctive warning of danger that every creature possesses. I had seen this symbol before. In my dreams, I touched the symbol, and the world around me shattered. I was running through a forest, thick snow falling, the howling of wolves echoing behind me. Not ordinary wolves, but beasts with glowing red eyes and breath as black as smoke. I knew they were hunting me. "You cannot escape," a voice echoed in my head. "You have been chosen." My heart pounded so hard it felt like it could burst. I felt it trying to tear itself from my ribcage, as if it no longer belonged to me. "You belong to us," the voice continued. "Your heart will open the door." A terrible pain pierced my chest. I fell to the snow, looking down to see my chest splitting open, flesh tearing apart not by claws or fangs, but from within. My heart was tearing itself out of my chest. I snatched my hand away from the girl, gasping for breath, cold sweat beating on my skin despite the sub-zero temperatures. That wasn't the girl's memory, it was a message, a warning. I staggered backward, trying to regain my composure. My mother died when I was 5, on a cold night similar to this. I remember waking up to see her soul standing by my bed, her eyes sad and distant. She said nothing, only pressed her hand to my cheek, a final tender gesture before vanishing into the night. The next morning, they found her frozen to death outside, on the way home. That was the first time I saw a soul, but not the last. The girl on the snow was an affront to nature. No soul, no memories, only blood that continued to flow, and a terrifying message. I stood up, my mind reeling with the image of a heart tearing itself from a ribcage. The girl's heart was gone, taken, but by whom and why? I took out my phone and photographed the old Slavic character on her ear. This wasn't the first case involving ancient symbols I had investigated, but it was certainly the most disturbing. When I returned to the research station, Sokolov was waiting, his eyes anxious. "What did you find?" he asked. I shook my head. "I'll need to examine it further, but one thing I can confirm, this isn't a natural death or even a conventional murder. This is a ritual. What kind of ritual, I don't know, but we need to find out." I paused before continuing. "Sokolov, do you believe in the existence of souls?" "I'm a scientist," he replied. "I believe in what can be measured." "Then how do you explain blood flowing in a 4,000-year-old corpse?" Sokolov fell silent. "Exactly," I said. "There are things our science cannot explain, and I fear we've just opened a door that should have remained closed forever." "What do you think we should do?" I looked toward the birch forest where the body was found. The wind howled, carrying whispers I didn't want to understand. "We need to bury her immediately and according to ancient rites." "But the scientific value," Sokolov protested. "Listen," I cut him off. "I've seen many things in my life. Things that if I told you, you'd think I was insane. But trust me when I say that if we don't bury her properly, worse things will happen." Before Sokolov could reply, my phone rang. Unknown number. "Volkov," I answered. "Monsieur Volkov," a man's voice with a heavy French accent spoke. "I am Professor Durand from the Sorbonne University. We need your help. There's been a discovery in the Paris Catacombs, an unusual discovery." I closed my eyes. Another call, another unnatural death. But that was my job, the one who deciphers death, the one who walks between worlds. "I'll come," I said, then hung up. Sokolov looked at me, waiting. "I have to go," I said, "but before I do, we'll bury that girl." And I hesitated, cut out her heart. I feel that we are being watched by something ancient and hungry. That night, we buried the girl in a simple ceremony. I didn't know if it was enough, but as I left Lake Baikal, I carried with me a chilling sensation that wouldn't dissipate. This was just the beginning. A piece in a larger puzzle I hadn't yet fully grasped. But I knew deep in my soul that something had been awakened, and it was watching me. I didn't know if Paris would bring any answers, but I knew my journey had only just begun, and it would lead me to places far darker than winter's Lake Baikal. Marginal note, * the symbol, Runna, appeared in my dream last night for the 3rd time this month. What does it mean? Part 2, excerpt from audio file, Paris Catacombs, France. Recording start, **23, 17, May 14th. This is Alexei Volkov, paranormal researcher. I am currently approximately 20 meters below the streets of Paris, in the Catacombs system. At the request of Professor Durand, I am heading into a newly discovered area, about 2 kilometers away from the main tourist route. My footsteps echo in the stifling space. Moisture condenses on the stone walls. My flashlight casts weak beams through a thin mist. The measured temperature is 12 deg C, humidity almost saturated. The smell? An indescribable smell. Not just the usual musty smell of catacombs, but also a heavy organic scent, as if something is decaying. My footsteps halt, then a whisper in French. It's Claude Mars, the geological expert, guiding me. He says we're almost there. The discovery was made 3 days ago by a University of Sorbonne archaeological team while they were mapping unexplored tunnels. My flashlight sweeps across walls reinforced with human bones. Thousands of skulls stacked upon each other, forming an eternal labyrinth. I've been to Paris many times, but never this deep into the catacombs. This place is a maze containing the remains of over 6 million Parisians, buried underground since the 18th century. Monsieur Volkov, presque arrive, Claude says, his voice echoing in the narrow space. Claude says we're almost there. I translate for the recorder. I can hear something strange. A peculiar noise in the background, a faint whisper from afar. I'm not sure if the recorder can pick it up, but there are whispers. Not the usual echoes of dripping water or wind through tunnels. These are very faint voices, as if hundreds of people are whispering at once, but from a great distance. Claude stops at a small turn, gesturing for me to follow. We turn into a lower tunnel, forcing us to crouch to move. A suffocating feeling envelops me as the space narrows, but I'm used to cramped spaces. Claude points, a deep breath, then a long silence. My God, a sharp intake of breath. I don't know how to describe it. Before me is a small room, probably excavated in the 17th or 18th century, according to Claude. But it's not the architecture that stuns me, but what's in the center of the room. It's a human body, not a mummy or a dry skeleton. This is a fresh corpse, or at least it looks like one. A man, perhaps 40 years old, dressed in 18th century clothing, a long coat, breeches, shoes with silver buckles. But it's impossible. These clothes must be hundreds of years old. But the body. My God, it looks as if he died only a few days ago. Footsteps move, metal clinks. Claude is preparing a stronger lamp. We need a closer look. The small generator starts, then the light intensifies. All right, I can see better now. The body is in a state of decomposition, but not in the usual way. The skin has turned purplish blue, but there are areas. My God, the skin is melting like wax under heat. A dark, thick liquid like honey oozes from the crevices. The smell is horrific, as if thousands of corpses are decomposing at once. Is this normal? Claude asks, his voice trembling. Don't get close, I say in French, gesturing with my hand. Keep your distance. The whispers in the background become clearer. The whispers are getting louder, clearer now, but I still don't understand the language. It's not French or any modern language I know. It sounds like old Latin, but distorted. I step closer to the body, feeling the presence of death distinctly. But unlike Lake Baikal, this place is teeming with souls. Not one, but hundreds. Claude, do you know who this person is? No, he shakes his head. No identification papers, nothing to identify him. But the clothes suggest he was a person of status, perhaps an aristocrat or a wealthy merchant. I kneel down, careful not to touch the body. Physical characteristics suggest this man died in extreme pain. His mouth is wide open in a silent scream, fingers curled like claws, body contorted in an unnatural posture. I need to focus, I tell Claude. Please stand back and remain silent for a few minutes. Deep, steady breaths. I close my eyes, allowing my psychic abilities to open. Since leaving Siberia, I've felt my abilities grow stronger, sharper, as if the encounter with the fur-clad girl had activated something within me. As my mind touched the body, a flood of images and emotions rushed in like a waterfall, torchlight, chanting, the smell of incense. Dozens of figures in black robes stood in a circle. In the center of the circle was a stone altar. This very man was bound to the altar, struggling in desperation. A plea in Old French, "Forgive me, I will pay any price." A voice replied, "Indeed, Count, you will pay with your soul." A dagger was raised high, firelight reflecting on the metal blade. but not to pierce the heart. They made small incisions one by one to allow the blood to flow out, soaking into the carved grooves of the stone altar. The chanting grew more fervent. Distorted Latin, not prayers to God, but a summons to something from the darkness. And then it came, shadows from the corners of the room coalescing, thick as oil, creeping onto the dying man, entering his mouth, nose, ears, eyes. The final scream was no longer human. A sudden, panicked intake of breath. Alexei, Alexei, are you all right? Claude shakes my shoulder, his voice filled with concern. I open my eyes, cold sweat dripping despite the chilly space. I'm fine. You passed out for almost a minute, Claude says. Your eyes turned completely black. I wipe the sweat from my forehead. I saw how he died. How? A ritual, not Christian, perhaps a secret society worshipping something far older. I try to stand, my legs still trembling. They didn't kill him immediately. They drained his blood slowly for something to possess his body. Claude takes a step back, his face pale. Mon Dieu. Claude, do you hear the whispers? He shakes his head. Nothing. Of course, only I can hear them. As I concentrate, the whispers seem to form a pattern, not random but deliberate. A sequence of numbers and characters repeating. Roman 13, 7 Roman 13, 7 Roman 13, 7. I need to check something, I say, turning back to examine the wall behind the body. My flashlight beam sweeps over the damp stone surface. At first, I see nothing special, but when I angle the light differently, carved characters emerge. They've been covered by moss and time. Roman 13, 7, I whisper. This is a coordinate or a code. Perhaps part of the catacomb numbering system, Claude suggests. No, this is much older. I touch the characters, and it feels like an electric current runs through my fingertips. A pained groan. Alexei, Claude approaches, worried. I'm fine, I reassure him, though my head is pounding. But we need to get out of here now. Why, what's wrong? Because we're not alone. I look toward the body, and he's waking up. A wet, squelching sound as if thick liquid is moving. Mon Dieu, Claude screams, his voice breaking with terror. The body is moving. Not muscle movement, but the movement of liquid within. As if the flesh is just a bag containing something coming to life. Dark, thick liquid oozes from its mouth, eyes, and every orifice, forming small puddles on the stone floor. Run, I shout, pulling Claude toward the exit. Rapid, chaotic footsteps, heavy breathing. What is it? Claude yells as we run through the narrow tunnels. It's not what, I gasp. It's what are they? There are many things in there, many imprisoned souls. We continue to run, footsteps echoing in the endless tunnels. After about 10 minutes of nonstop running, we stop to catch our breath. I think we're safe, Claude pants. For now, I say, leaning against the stone wall, but we need to report this, seal off that area. What did you see, Alexei, when you touched the wall? I look down at my hand. Faint burns have appeared on my fingertips, as if I had touched red-hot metal. A door, I say softly. A door opened in the 18th century by a group calling themselves the 13th Society. They weren't ordinary Satanists. They pursued something older, more primal, an entity from before humanity existed, and that count was a sacrifice. But something went wrong. The ritual wasn't completed. What they summoned arrived but couldn't fully manifest in our world. It's trapped, partly in the Count's body, partly in the cave wall itself. Claude shakes his head, unable to believe. Impossible. I'm a scientist, I don't believe in ghosts. Then how do you explain what we just saw? I ask, my voice low. That black liquid, a body that hasn't decomposed after hundreds of years. He falls silent. Exactly, I say. There are things our science cannot explain, and thankfully so. Our footsteps resume, slower now. What do we do now? Claude asks as we continue moving toward the exit. I'll contact some people I know, people with experience in these matters. And I need to review old maps of Paris to learn about this 13th Society. Do you think there are other places like this? I know for certain there are, I say, recalling the old Slavic symbol on the girl's ear in Bakel. This isn't an isolated incident. This is part of something much larger. When we finally emerged from the catacombs and returned to ground level, the rare winter sunlight of Paris had never felt so gratefully received. but even in the sunlight, I still heard the whispers, repeating like a promise and a threat at once. Roman 13, 7 Roman 13, 7 Roman 13, 7. I knew I wouldn't rest until I found out what it meant and why it connected to the runa symbol in Siberia. Professor Durand was waiting for us in his university office. As I recounted what we had seen, he turned pale. "I will seal off that area," he said, "but Monsieur Volkov, I fear we have discovered something beyond our comprehension." "Indeed," I agreed, "and I'm afraid this is only the beginning." That night in my hotel room overlooking the Eiffel Tower, I received an email from an unfamiliar address. "We heard about your discovery in Paris. We need your help in Vietnam. There are strange drawings in Son Doong Cave, drawings of a virus that does not belong on this earth." The email was signed by Dr. Nguyen Minh Hieu, Institute of Southeast Asian Archaeology. I closed my laptop, looking out the window. The Eiffel Tower shone brightly in the Paris night, but I couldn't enjoy its beauty. My mind was elsewhere, in the darkness underground, where the whispers continued. Roman 13, 7. Recording end, *0143, May 15th. Marginal note, last night's dream, I found myself in a circular room with 13 doors. Each door had a symbol. The 7th door had the runa symbol. Could it be related? Part 3, excerpt from sketchbook, Son Doong Cave, Vietnam. The interior of Son Doong Cave is so vast it could contain a 40-story building. This, the world's largest cave system, creates a feeling of being on another planet. A separate world with its own forests, rivers, and unique ecosystem thriving in the dark. But I didn't come here to admire its natural beauty. I came for the drawings. "Mr. Volkov, this is the area we just discovered last week." Dr. Nguyen Minh Hieu led me through a narrow passage, far from the usual tourist routes. The air grew oppressive as we delved deeper into the mountain. The humidity was almost saturated, causing sweat to break out on my forehead despite the relatively cool temperature. Layers of moss covered the rock surfaces. Our headlamps cast bizarre shadows dancing on the cave walls. The faint sound of dripping water echoed in the vast space, creating a hypnotic, rhythmic melody. "You mentioned drawings of a virus," I reminded the Vietnamese doctor. "How could prehistoric people know about viruses? They didn't have microscopes." Dr. Hieu turned to me, his eyes serious in the dim light. "That's precisely why we contacted you, Mr. Volkov. We cannot explain it." We turned into a smaller, lower tunnel, forced to crouch to move. Reflexively, I touched my pocket, ensuring my sketchbook and pencils were still there. Since the incident in Paris 3 weeks ago, I decided to record every important detail by hand instead of using a recorder. Electronic technology seemed susceptible to whatever I was tracking. "Here it is," Dr. Hieu stopped, shining his light onto a smooth rock wall. "We had to use UV light to discover them." He pulled a small purple lamp from his pocket and switched it on. Under the ultraviolet light, drawings invisible in normal light suddenly became clear on the rock surface. I couldn't believe my eyes. These weren't crude, rudimentary drawings as I had imagined. These were detailed, almost scientific images. Shapes resembling modern viruses, spherical structures with sharp spikes protruding, some with helical structures like DNA. Alongside them were drawings of humans, but with their bone structures clearly depicted, as in an anatomy book, and things resembling root systems piercing through the bones, spreading like a network. "We have dated these drawings," Dr. Hieu said softly, his voice echoing in the confined space. "Approximately 20,000 years old." "Impossible," I whispered, reaching out to lightly touch the drawings. "But it's real." The moment my fingertips touched the rock surface, a flood of images rushed into my mind. Screams, pain, panic, a small village in the jungle. People collapsing one by one, their skin cracking, their bones fracturing. From within their bones, delicate root tendrils sprouted, piercing through flesh, connecting the sick individuals, forming a living network. They were still alive, still conscious, but no longer in control of their bodies. One man stood in the center of the village, unaffected. He looked around with utter horror and pain. He was both an outsider and one who felt the suffering of everyone. He could hear their thoughts, feel their pain. He was a psychic, the first. I snatched my hand back, breathing heavily, my heart pounding erratically. "Mr. Volkov," Dr. Hieu placed a worried hand on my shoulder. "Are you all right?" I'm fine. I tried to regain my composure. It's just that these images are very powerful. What did you see? His eyes lit up with scientific curiosity. I couldn't tell him the whole truth. No one could understand what I had just witnessed, the horror of a disease that didn't belong to this world. It seems this is a record of an ancient epidemic, I said, revealing only part of the truth. But the level of detail is too advanced for that era. Precisely, Dr. Hugh nodded vigorously. There's no way prehistoric people could have such knowledge of microbiology. This is inexplicable. I continued to examine the drawings, careful not to touch them again. Symbols, strange characters interspersed with the images. Not any writing I had ever seen, but there was an unsettling familiarity. Dr. Hugh, besides these drawings, have you found anything else? He hesitated. You should see it for yourself. The doctor led me deeper into the cave, to a small adjoining chamber. He switched on his flashlight, shining it into a corner of the room. I almost stumbled. A human skeleton, still adorned with fragments of dried skin and tissue. But the most horrifying thing was what was growing from it. From between the ribs, delicate root-like structures extended, forming a complex network clinging to the rock face. These roots were not ordinary organic matter. They were metallic black, as if made from a type of material that did not belong on Earth. We didn't dare touch them, Dr. Hugh said, his voice trembling. We sent air and soil samples to the lab but found no pathogens. However, there's a strange phenomenon. Any electronic device left near the skeleton for too long malfunctions. Batteries drain quickly, data gets corrupted. I approached, feeling an invisible pull, not a physical force, but a kind of psychic connection, as if the skeleton was calling to me. Have you dated the skeleton yet? I asked, keeping my voice calm. Approximately 20,000 years old, coinciding with the drawings. But the strange thing is, he hesitated. What is it? The bone structure isn't entirely identical to modern Homo sapiens. There are minor differences in the skull and pelvis structure. As if this is another species of human or an unknown variant. I stared at the skeleton with its bizarre black roots and felt a primal fear surge within me. What I was seeing wasn't just an ancient corpse. This was evidence of something far beyond our understanding of human history. Do you think, Dr. Hugh lowered his voice, almost whispering, this could be evidence of alien intervention? In any other situation, I might have laughed at such a hypothesis. But after what I had seen in Siberia and Paris, after what I had just felt from the drawings, I was no longer sure of anything. I think, I carefully chose my words, that there are things older, more primal than our concept of aliens. Things that were here before humanity existed. I took out my sketchbook, beginning to draw the images on the wall and the skeleton with its strange roots. My hand moved almost automatically, as if guided by an external force. While drawing, I felt a strange connection to the man in the vision, that first psychic. It felt as if we were one, as if I was experiencing what he had experienced 20,000 years ago. What do you think happened to them? Dr. Hugh asked, looking over my shoulder at the sketchbook. I think they encountered something, a type of organism or pathogen that doesn't belong to this world. Something that invaded their bodies from within, transforming them into something else. And this man, he pointed to the skeleton, he was the only one who could resist it in some way, perhaps due to his genes or a special ability like mine, I thought but didn't say aloud. As I completed the sketch, one detail caught my attention. In the corner of the wall drawing, a small, dark red symbol, almost overlooked. I hadn't noticed it before. A simple diamond shape. Doctor, do you know this symbol? I pointed to it. He shook his head. No, I've never seen it in any ancient culture in Southeast Asia. I drew the symbol in my notebook, feeling an inexplicable connection. First, Rana in Siberia, then Roman 13, 7 in Paris, and now Om in Vietnam. Pieces of a giant puzzle were slowly emerging. What material did prehistoric people use to create these drawings? I asked, pointing to the vibrant red of the symbol. Dr. Hugh looked at me with heavy eyes. We analyzed it. It's human blood, preserved in some way, still fresh in a sense. A chill ran down my spine. Whose blood? The DNA doesn't match any modern human group, but it contains a strange genetic sequence that we cannot identify. I stood silently, looking back at the skeleton with its strange black roots, and felt a suffocating sensation engulf me. Not just from the cramped space of the cave, but also from the feeling of isolation amidst the immense mysteries of the universe. For the first time in my career, I felt utterly powerless, like a child lost in a deep forest. I closed my sketchbook, trying to regain my composure. We need to seal off this area. No one should be allowed in here again. Why? Dr. Hugh was surprised. This is a significant archaeological discovery. This isn't archaeology, I said, my voice serious. This is something far more dangerous. Those roots, they're not dead, they're dormant. Impossible, he protested. They're 20,000 years old. Age means nothing to this thing. I pointed to the black roots. Do you see it? They're faintly glowing, a vibration invisible to the naked eye, but I can feel it. Dr. Hugh squinted at the skeleton, clearly unable to see what I was talking about. But that was the privilege of a psychic, to see what others cannot. Mr. Volkov, with all due respect, I cannot close off this area based solely on your feelings. I understood his reaction. If I were in his shoes, I'd be skeptical too, but I didn't have time to persuade him. Dr. Hugh, do you trust me? I trust your reputation. Then trust me when I say that if these roots awaken, it won't stop at this cave. It will spread, just like 20,000 years ago. Seemingly seeing the seriousness in my eyes, Dr. Hugh nodded reluctantly. I will recommend temporarily restricting access to this area for further study. Thank you. As we prepared to leave, a small sound echoed behind us, a crackling like breaking bones. We spun around. One of the black roots had moved. Just a little, perhaps less than a centimeter, but enough for both of us to see. My God, Dr. Hugh whispered, his face pale. Let's go, I said, pulling him out of the room. Right now. We moved quickly through the tunnels, returning to the main entrance of the cave. No one spoke throughout the journey. Only when we reached the sunlight did Dr. Hugh speak. Do you think it can come back to life? I don't know, I replied honestly, but I wouldn't bet on it not being able to. I will request that the area be sealed indefinitely, he said, his voice more resolute. I nodded gratefully. Good, and perhaps you should destroy any samples already taken from there. We left Son Doong Cave in silence, each lost in our own thoughts. Images of the ancient epidemic still haunted me. The way it transformed humans into hybrid creatures, the way it connected them into a living network. And that psychic man, who witnessed it all but couldn't save them. I wondered if that was my fate, to witness but be unable to prevent. Upon arriving at my hotel in Phonganache, I checked my email and found a new message from an unknown address. We have heard about your visit to Son Doong. We need your help in Angkor Wat, Cambodia. There is an ancient letter we cannot decipher, a letter written about spirits trapped in stone. The email was signed by Dr. Chanarong, Angkor Conservation Institute. I closed my eyes, feeling weary to my bones, but I knew I couldn't stop, not when the pieces were slowly revealing themselves. I opened my sketchbook and looked at the 3 symbols I had collected. Rana, Roman 13:7, and Om. How did they connect, and why were they leading me through the darkest places on Earth? I added a detail to the Om symbol, a dark red smear, like blood. It wasn't that I wanted to add it, but my hand moved on its own, as if guided by another force. As I looked at the page, I had the feeling that the symbol was looking back at me. I put down my pen, preparing for the next journey. Cambodia awaited, and with it, another piece of this horrifying mystery. Marginal note, * last night's dream, I saw myself standing in a dense forest. Around me people were mutating, roots growing from their flesh. They called my name. Not Alexei, but an older name. A name I don't remember but still felt familiar. When I woke up, I found a blood stain on my pillow, blood from my nose. It perfectly formed the Om symbol. Part 4, excerpt from letter. Angkor Wat, Cambodia. The sunset descended upon Angkor Wat, painting the ancient spires with a vibrant orange glow. Long shadows stretched across the stone facade, creating grotesque shapes as if ancient gods were returning from a distant past. I stood in the corridor of the main temple, feeling the breath of history and the presence of something deeper, older than these stones. Dr. Chanarong had met me at Siem Reap Airport this morning. A short, thin man with a stern face full of wrinkles, as if he had witnessed too much in his life. He didn't ask me about Siberia or Vietnam. He simply said, "It is waiting for you." I didn't need to ask what it was. Now, as the crowds of tourists had left, only I, Dr. Chanarong, and a few conservation staff remained. They led me through dark corridors into areas sealed off from the public. "We found it 2 weeks ago," Dr. Chanarong said as we passed through a low doorway, entering a small room deep within the temple. A team restoring the western section had discovered a secret compartment. The room was pitch dark, the smell of damp stone and accumulated time heavy in the air. A staff member switched on a light, revealing a small, square, empty space, except for a stone pedestal in the center. On the pedestal lay a crumpled, ancient envelope and a few torn pieces of paper. "We didn't dare move it," the doctor explained. When one staff member tried to touch it, he heard whispers. "Whispers?" I asked, feeling goosebumps rise on my skin. "Human voices, many voices at once." He said they were begging to be freed. I approached the stone pedestal, studying it carefully. The envelope was made of a type of parchment that had yellowed with age, but it wasn't as ancient as the temple, perhaps from the 20th century. On the envelope were dried bloodstains, not ordinary smudges, but clearly human blood. "The date of the envelope?" I asked. "Around 1975 to 1979. I understood immediately. The Khmer Rouge era, one of the bloodiest periods in Cambodian history. Over 2 million people perished under Pol Pot's genocidal regime. "We believe it's related to the prisoners held here," the doctor said softly. "Angkor Wat was once used by the Khmer Rouge as a place of detention and torture." I pulled gloves from my pocket and put them on, not to protect the documents, but to protect myself. Objects carrying such strong energy could cause violent reactions in psychics like me. "May I open it?" I asked. Dr. Chanarong nodded. "That's why we invited you. None of us dared." I carefully lifted the envelope, surprised by its weight. As if something denser than paper was inside, I slowly opened it, trying not to tear the already damaged parts further. Inside was a letter written in Khmer, but what was peculiar was the bloodstains forming strange shapes that bled into the script. Not random, but intentional, as if blood had been used as a special ink. "Can you read Khmer?" the doctor asked. "No," I admitted, "but I can feel it." I placed the letter back on the pedestal and put my hand on it, closing my eyes. Immediately, whispers flooded my mind. Not Khmer or any modern language, but a much older tongue, a language I didn't know yet understood. They have awoken. They awoke when blood flowed onto the stone. When suffering reached its peak, the gate opened. Souls trapped in stone, souls unable to pass on. I, Phim Keo, the last of the Strasnania lineage, record this warning. The black-robed ones do not know what they are doing. Every person they kill here, every drop of blood that soaks into the stone, is a piece of the gate opening. They think they are killing enemies of the revolution, but in reality, they are providing life force to that which has slept beneath this temple since ancient Angkor, that which our ancestors imprisoned with their blood and their souls. If anyone finds this letter, heed my words. Do not call their names, do not seek the symbols. 7 doors must remain closed, 7 symbols must remain scattered. I opened my eyes, breathing heavily. Dr. Chanarong looked at me with concern. "What did you see?" he asked. "A warning," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "From a man named Phim Keo. He spoke of souls trapped in stone and something ancient awakening beneath this temple." "Phim Keo," Dr. Chanarong was astonished. "You know this name? It appeared in my vision." "This is incredible." Phim Keo was the last of the lineage of monks guarding Angkor Wat. He was killed by the Khmer Rouge in 1976. No one knew he had written anything down. I looked back at the letter, noticing the shapes formed by the blood. They weren't random but intentional symbols. One of them was the Khmer character, beautiful but menacing. "Do you know what this character means?" I asked, pointing to it. Dr. Chanarong looked intently and nodded. "That is Chilchab. It means pain in Khmer." "Pain, of course. Pain is the key. Pain is the door. Doctor, besides this letter, have you discovered anything else? Any symbols on the stone or dried bloodstains?" He hesitated, then nodded. Yes, please follow me. We left the small room, walked through a long corridor to another area of the temple. The sun had completely set, and Angkor Wat was plunged into darkness. Only faint spotlights illuminated the main walkways. The doctor led me to a large stone column, separated from the rest of the temple, located in a fenced-off area. This is a Naga column, a divine serpent in Hindu and Buddhist mythology, he explained. It was found buried underground recently. We excavated it for study. The stone column, about 3 meters tall, was intricately carved with a serpent coiled around it, its 7-headed cobra hood fanned out at the top. But what caught my attention wasn't the sculpture, but the dried bloodstains clinging to the stone, now dark brown after many years. These bloodstains are not from the Khmer Rouge era, the doctor said. They are much older. Carbon analysis shows they date back to the 12th century, the same period as the construction of Angkor Wat. I approached the stone column, feeling a powerful presence radiating from it. Not just one soul, but many. Hundreds, perhaps thousands of souls trapped within the stone. May I? I extended my hand, looking at the doctor. He nodded, but took a step back, as if not wanting to stand too close when I touched it. I placed my hand on the cold stone surface, and the world around me vanished. Chanting, the sweet smell of incense. Hundreds of monks stood in a circle around the newly erected stone column. In the center of the circle, a man in golden robes knelt, holding a golden dagger. I do this not for glory, but for survival, the man said. My blood will seal the door, my soul will be the chains. He raised the dagger to his throat and made a deep incision. Blood gushed out, fresh and hot, soaking into the stone. But instead of flowing down by gravity, the blood moved upward as if sucked in by an invisible force. As the man collapsed, a low growl echoed from beneath the earth, not an animal's growl, but the sound of something more primal, angry at being imprisoned. 7 doors, the man whispered as life left his body. 7 symbols, 7 guardians. As long as blood flows in my lineage, it will remain dormant. I snatched my hand back, staggering backward. Dr. Chanarong quickly caught me. Mr. Volkov, are you all right? I'm fine, I panted, sweat dripping from my forehead despite the cool night. I saw a sacrificial ritual, a ritual to seal something. Seal what? A door, one of 7 doors. I looked into the doctor's eyes. Have you ever heard of 7 doors or 7 symbols in legend? He shook his head. Not specifically, but there are many legends about gates leading to other worlds, worlds of gods and demons. In some ancient texts, there is mention of the Strasnania, a lineage chosen to protect the world from ancient entities. I nodded, the pieces beginning to connect, and Fimkio was the last of that lineage. So it seems, the doctor agreed, and he was killed during the Khmer Rouge era. When his blood flowed onto the stone, I whispered, the chains were broken. The doctor completed my sentence, his eyes wide with sudden realization. We stood in silence in the darkness, only the sound of insects and wind blowing through the ancient ruins. Suddenly, Angkor Wat was no longer a historical monument but a prison slowly losing its chains. Since the discovery of this stone column, the doctor said softly, there have been strange phenomena, whispers, objects moved without anyone touching them, and, he hesitated. 3 people have committed suicide, 3 excavation workers who worked with the stone column. They all left strange messages written in blood. They need me. I felt a chill run down my spine. Doctor, we need to bury this stone column immediately. But the research value. No research value is worth exchanging for other lives, I interrupted. Whatever is imprisoned in this stone, it's waking up and it's hungry. Dr. Chanarong looked at me intently, then nodded. I will arrange this. But Mr. Volkov, if this is one of 7 doors, where are the other 6? I took out my sketchbook and opened the page with my notes on the 3 symbols I had found. Rana, from Siberia, Roman 13, 7, from Paris, and Om, from Vietnam. I think I'm being led to them, I said, pointing to the symbols. And now I have the 4th symbol. I added the Khmer character for pain to the list. But why you? The doctor asked. Why do these symbols lead you all over the world? I had no answer, but a deep feeling told me this was not random. There was something about my psychic abilities, about my ability to see and feel what others could not. I wasn't just a researcher following symbols. I was part of the puzzle. I don't know, I admitted, but I have a feeling I'll find out soon. As we finally emerged from the temple's main area, moonlight illuminated the ancient spires, creating a scene both beautiful and eerie. Normally, I would stop to admire that beauty, but tonight I only saw shadows and buried secrets. "Do you want to see the letter again?" the doctor asked as we walked through the corridor. I shook my head. "I've seen enough, but I'll take a copy of it if possible." "Of course, I'll send photos to your email." As we reached the temple gate, I noticed Dr. Chanarong looking at me with a strange expression. "Is something wrong, doctor?" "Mr. Volkov, do you ever feel that these phenomena are seeking you, rather than you seeking them?" The question startled me, but it touched upon a deep fear I had tried to bury from Siberia to Paris, from Vietnam to Cambodia. I always had the feeling I was being led by an invisible hand. "Sometimes," I admitted, "but I can't stop, not when I've come this far." "Be careful, Mr. Volkov. Some secrets are buried for good reason." I nodded, but deep down I knew I wouldn't stop. Not when the pieces were slowly revealing themselves, not when the 7 doors and 7 symbols were still a mystery to be deciphered. That night, in my hotel room overlooking the ancient temples of Angkor, I received another email. "We have heard about your visit to Angkor Wat. We need your help in Peru. There are drawings on the Nazca Desert that are waking up." The email was signed by Professor Maria Rodriguez, University of Lima. I closed my eyes, feeling exhausted to my bones, but I couldn't look away from the new destination. My mind was already elsewhere, on the ancient lines of the Nazca Desert where the 5th symbol awaited. I opened my sketchbook and looked at the 4 symbols I had collected. Rana, Roman 13:7, Om, and Pain, 4 of 7. As I redrew them, I noticed they formed an unconscious shape, like a door slightly ajar. I hastily closed the notebook, not wanting to see more. That night, I dreamed I was standing before a colossal door, covered with strange symbols. The door was shaking, as if something on the other side was trying to break out. And in the dream, I wasn't the one trying to stop it. I was the one opening it. Marginal note, asterisk, I have analyzed the 4 symbols. They are connected. Rana is sacrifice, Roman 13:7 is ritual, Om is pathogen, and Pain is suffering. Could this be a formula, an equation to open or close the doors? And why do I feel like I've known the answer for so long? Part 5, excerpt from Drone Report, Nazca Desert, Peru. Survey Report No. N731. Location, Nazca Plateau, Peru. Date, June 16. Performed by Alexei Volkov, consultant. Equipment used, drone equipped with thermal and spectral cameras. The Peruvian sun beat down on the desert mercilessly, temperatures reaching 42°C in the shade. But here, on the barren Nazca Plateau, there was no shade, only sand, rock, and colossal, mysterious drawings. Traces of a long-vanished civilization, leaving messages we still haven't fully deciphered. I stood under a makeshift tarp, watching Professor Maria Rodriguez pilot the drone across the deep blue sky. On the laptop screen, we watched images transmitted from the drone's camera, a perspective only birds and pilots could see until drone technology emerged. "This is a newly discovered area," Professor Rodriguez explained, directing the drone southwest of the plateau. "A private pilot reported strange changes on one of the bird drawings. Initially, we thought it was vandalism, but after inspection..." She paused as if unsure how to articulate what she had seen. "After inspection, what?" I urged. "You'd better see for yourself," she said, adjusting the drone's camera to look down. The image on the screen astonished me. One of the famous Nazca lines, the colossal hummingbird geoglyph with its widespread wings and characteristic long beak. But something was wrong. The lines of the drawing were moving. "This is time-lapse video, isn't it?" I asked, trying to find a logical explanation. "No," the professor shook her head. "This is live footage. The Earth is moving, Mr. Volkov, very slowly, almost imperceptibly to the naked eye, but the drone can detect it. It has moved about 30 centimeters in the past 2 weeks." "Impossible," I whispered, staring intently at the screen. "The Earth cannot move itself in such a deliberate pattern. There must be a geological reason." "We've checked every possibility," the professor interrupted. No seismic activity, no unusual erosion, no underground water flows. And most importantly, only the outlines of the bird drawing are moving, not the entire area. I looked closer at the image. The professor was right. The outlines of the hummingbird were slowly expanding, as if the bird was trying to stretch itself. "Show me the thermal data," I requested. Professor Rodriguez switched to thermal camera mode. The image shifted to a red-blue spectrum, displaying surface temperatures, and that confirmed my fears. The outlines of the bird drawing glowed bright red, significantly hotter than the surrounding land. The temperature along the outlines is about 5 degc higher than the surrounding area, the professor explained. We've taken soil samples and analyzed them, but found no heat source or chemical reaction that could explain this. "Show me a close-up of the beak," I said, feeling a strange urge. The drone flew lower, zooming in on the beak of the colossal hummingbird geoglyph. The outline of the beak had significantly changed compared to historical images. It had become sharper, more like a piercing tool than a nectar-sucking beak. "When did this phenomenon begin?" I asked, not taking my eyes off the screen. "Exactly 18 days ago," the professor replied. "On May 29th. I froze. May 29th. The exact day I touched the Naga column in Angkor Wat. The exact day I saw the fourth symbol." "Did anything special happen on that day?" I asked, trying to keep my voice normal. "Nothing unusual. It was a full moon, but that happens every month." I didn't tell her that the full moon on May 29th was the 5th full moon of the year, a phenomenon called a blue moon by weather calendars, occurring every 3 years. Not a coincidence. "Professor, can you fly the drone around this area? I want to examine the entire drawing from multiple angles." She nodded and piloted the drone in a wide circle around the hummingbird geoglyph. I watched intently, searching for any pattern or symbol that might connect to the 4 symbols I had found previously. "Stop," I suddenly said as the drone flew past the tail section of the drawing. "Turn back and zoom into that area." The professor complied, controlling the drone to turn back and zoom in on the ground near the bird's tail. At first, I wasn't sure what I had seen, but as the camera zoomed closer, it appeared clearly. A small crack on the ground forming an unnatural shape, a bird footprint. "That wasn't part of the original drawing," Professor Rodriguez said, noticing the surprise on my face. "No, it wasn't," I agreed. "It's new, and it looks exactly like a real bird's footprint, not an abstract symbol like the rest of the drawing." "But that's impossible," she protested. "A real bird's footprint would only be a few centimeters long, while this one is almost a meter." I didn't reply. In my head, the pieces were slowly connecting. Siberia, Paris, Vietnam, Cambodia, and now Peru. 5 locations, 5 symbols, 5 doors, 2 more. "Professor, can we land the drone? I want to get closer to the drawing." "Of course, but we must be careful. This is a precious historical site, and walking on it can cause damage." "I understand. We'll follow the designated path." 20 minutes later, we had driven the Jeep close to the hummingbird geoglyph area. The outdoor temperature was almost unbearable. Heat shimmered up from the ground, creating dancing heat waves before my eyes. I wore a wide-brimmed hat and sunglasses, but still felt my skin burning under the desert sun. "This way," Professor Rodriguez led me along a small trail marked with white stones. "We only allow access on these paths to protect the drawings." As we approached the hummingbird geoglyph, I began to feel a presence, not a specific soul like before, but a collective sensation, as if thousands of creatures were watching us from beneath the ground. "Do you feel anything?" I asked the professor. "Just incredibly hot," she smiled faintly, "and perhaps a little awe. These drawings always create that feeling, even when you've studied them for years." We continued walking until we reached the closest point to the drawing that could be accessed without damaging it. From the ground, it was difficult to see the entire shape of the bird. That's why the Nazca people created them to be viewed from above. But I wasn't concerned with the entire drawing at the moment. I focused on the bird footprint-shaped crack we had detected from the drone. "Where is it?" I asked, scanning the area. "To our right, about 15 meters away," the professor pointed. I followed her direction but couldn't see anything from this distance. However, I felt it. a faint vibration, a strange pulse emanating from the ground, as if a heart was beating beneath the layer of sand. "I need to get closer," I said. "Mr. Volkov, I cannot allow that." "I won't cause any damage, I promise, but I need to see that crack. This is why you invited me, isn't it? To understand what's happening." Professor Rodriguez hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. "All right, but be extremely careful with every step." I approached the crack, moving slowly and cautiously on the dry ground. When only a few meters away, I could see it clearly. A bird footprint-shaped crack, about 5 centimeters deep into the earth. But the strange thing was that the crack didn't look like it had been compressed from above, but rather pushed up from below, as if a footprint was trying to escape from the earth. I knelt down, took off my gloves, and slowly extended my hand toward the crack. "Careful," the professor warned from behind. When my hand was only a few centimeters from the crack, I felt a powerful surge of heat radiating from it. Not just physical temperature, but another kind of energy, an ancient and powerful presence. I touched the edge of the crack, and the world around me vanished. The wind howled across the vast plateau, but not natural wind. This was the scream of souls. Thousands of souls crying out in pain. The sky darkened, the sun obscured by a colossal shadow. A creature soared overhead, not a real bird, but something else. Something with wings hundreds of meters wide, covering the entire sky. It emitted a piercing cry, a sound that did not belong to this world. Below, the Nazca people knelt on the ground, drawing colossal lines with blood and bone, creating a complex labyrinth, not for reverence, but for imprisonment. Each line was a chain, each symbol a lock. "It cannot escape," an ancient voice echoed. "As long as the drawings remain intact, it will sleep silently in the earth." The creature in the sky roared in fury as it was pulled down, forced to shrink, imprisoned in a prison of earth and stone. The Nazca lines are not messages to the gods, they are prisons for the gods. I sprang up, staggering backward, gasping for breath as if I had just been submerged underwater. Professor Rodriguez rushed to my side. "Mr. Volkov, are you all right?" I'm fine," I panted, feeling a sharp pain in my head. "But we must leave here immediately." "What happened? What did you see?" I didn't have time to answer. A loud sound erupted, not from a distance, but right beneath our feet. The ground shook, and a new crack appeared, extending from the bird footprint crack to the body of the hummingbird geoglyph. "Earthquake," Professor Rodriguez looked around in panic. "No," I said, pulling her up. "Run!" We ran toward the jeep while behind us, the cracks continued to expand, forming a network like veins on the ground. The outlines of the hummingbird geoglyph began to move faster, visible to the naked eye, as if the bird was thrashing, trying to break free from invisible chains. When we reached the car and started the engine, I looked back, and I saw the unimaginable. The beak of the hummingbird geoglyph had split the ground, forming a deep hole from which blood was erupting. Not water or magma, but fresh red blood shooting high into the air and falling onto the hot ground, evaporating into a dark red cloud. "My God," Professor Rodriguez whispered, her eyes wide with horror. I said nothing, only gestured for her to drive away quickly. As we sped off, I looked in the rearview mirror and saw the red cloud rising, forming an unmistakable shape, the silhouette of a colossal bird spreading its wings. "What in God's name just happened?" the professor asked as we drove away from the geoglyph area. "I've never seen anything like it in 25 years of research." "The Nazca lines are not messages or religious symbols, as we always thought," I said, my voice hoarse. "They are prisons, chains to hold something ancient and dangerous captive." "What are you talking about? Imprison what?" "Entities from another age, creatures the Nazca called gods, but are in reality something else entirely." She looked at me as if I had lost my mind. "Mr. Volkov, I am a scientist. I cannot accept such a hypothesis without evidence." "Then how do you explain the blood erupting from the ground, the lines that move themselves?" I countered. She fell silent. "There is no scientific explanation for what we just witnessed. The same thing is happening in other places around the world," I added. "Siberia, Paris, Vietnam, Cambodia, and now Peru. Ancient symbols are awakening, chains are breaking." "What do you think will happen?" the professor asked, her voice low. "I don't know, but I know we only have 2 more symbols to find, 2 more doors. When we returned to the research station, Professor Rodriguez immediately contacted the authorities to cordon off the hummingbird geoglyph area. I sat in a corner, opened my sketchbook, and redrew what I had seen. The colossal bird in the sky, the Nazca lines as magical chains, and the new symbol I had discovered, the bird footprint. I added it to the list of symbols I had collected. Runa from Siberia, Roman 13-7 from Paris, Om from Vietnam, Pain from Cambodia, and now the bird footprint from Peru. 5 symbols, 5 doors, 2 more. As I looked at the list, I realized something. The symbols weren't just random signs. They formed a pattern, a formula, a ritual. Sacrifice, ritual, pathogen, pain, and now the bird footprint, awakening. It wasn't a warning. It was an instruction, a blueprint to open the final door. And I was the one executing it, going from door to door, collecting the symbols, activating them with my psychic abilities. I slammed the notebook shut, stunned by this realization. Why me? Why was I being led to these places? And more importantly, could I stop? The answer came immediately as my phone rang. A new email. We have heard about the incident in Nazca. We need your help in Chernobyl, Ukraine. Something is awakening in Zone A, where no one is allowed to enter. The email was signed by Dr. Michael Sokolov, the same person who contacted me about the fur-clad girl in Siberia. The circle was closing. The 6th door awaited. As I looked out the window, toward the distant Nazca Plateau, I saw the red cloud still hanging in the sky, forming the shape of a colossal bird. And for a fleeting moment, I thought I saw it looking straight at me, recognizing me, waiting for me. I knew I had no other choice. I had to continue. I had to find the truth behind all of this. I had to find out who I was and why I was the key to opening 7 doors. Marginal note, asterisk, I checked my wrist after touching the crack. There was a burn in the shape of a bird footprint. It didn't hurt, but it was hot as fire. 5 symbols, 5 marks on my body. What am I becoming? Part 6, excerpt from diary. Chernobyl exclusion Zone A, Ukraine. June 24, 05:17. Dawn in Pripyat never truly breaks. A gray, filtering light penetrates through thick clouds and the radioactive dust that still hangs in the air after nearly 4 decades. Abandoned high-rise buildings stand like giant skeletons of a dead civilization, silent amidst the sea of trees that have engulfed the ghost city. I am sitting in an old UAZ Jeep parked outside the perimeter of Exclusion Zone A, the area closest to reactor number 4, where the 1986 disaster occurred. Even the most reckless tour guides dare not bring visitors here. Radiation levels are still 100 times higher than normal, and the Ukrainian authorities have banned all civilian activity within a 1-kilometer radius of the reactor. But Sokolov has a special permit, and I have a special reason to be here. Are you sure you want to continue, Alexei? Sokolov asks, his voice low through the radio in his protective suit. You've seen the photos, we can turn back and report. No, I cut him off. I have to see it with my own eyes, I have to feel it. Sokolov nodded, he understood. After all we had been through in Baikal, he knew my abilities required direct contact. We wore full radiation protective suits, masks, gloves, and personal dosimeters attached to our chests. The devices only clicked faintly, indicating temporary safe radiation levels. Remember, we only have 45 minutes, Sokolov reminded me. Then we have to leave immediately, no matter what we find. I nodded. 45 minutes at this radiation level was the maximum safe limit, and neither of us wanted to be Chernobyl's next victim. We left the car, stepping onto the path leading into Zone A. The air was heavy and strangely still. No birds, no insects, only the faint whisper of wind through the abandoned buildings and towering trees. It started about 2 weeks ago, Sokolov said as we walked deeper into the area. A routine inspection team discovered changes in the vegetation. Initially, they thought it was just a new mutation, which isn't uncommon here. But then, he didn't need to finish his sentence. We had just rounded a corner, and I saw it. A scene straight out of a nightmare. The forest before us was no longer a forest in the usual sense. The tree trunks were twisted and bent at unnatural angles, as if they were in excruciating pain. The bark peeled off in strips, revealing underneath not wood, but something bright red and wet, like raw flesh. The branches extended like slender arms with long, distorted fingers at their ends. "My God," I whispered. "You haven't seen anything yet," Sokolov said, leading me deeper into the mutated forest. The scent, or rather the stench, assaulted my senses even through the mask. A burning chemical smell, like melting plastic, mixed with the metallic scent of blood and something sweet and rotting. It made my eyes sting and my throat dry. "Do you feel it?" Sokolov asked. "Feel what?" "The temperature. It's hotter here." He was right. Although it was early summer, the temperature outside Zone A was only about 18 deg C. Here, even through the protective suit, I could feel the heat, perhaps close to 30 deg C, as if walking into a living body. We continued walking, and the path led us to a clearing in the forest. Before us was a small lake, part of the old power plant's cooling system. But the water in the lake was no longer water. It was dark red and thick like blood, with black streaks swirling on the surface, and it was moving. Not with the wind or current, but as if it were breathing, swelling, and receding with a steady rhythm. "Sample analysis shows this isn't blood," Sokolov explained. "It's a form of mutated algae mixed with an unclassified fungus. They've merged somehow, forming a symbiosis." "But why is it moving?" I asked, unable to take my eyes off the breathing lake surface. "We don't know, but that's not the scariest part." He pointed to the other side of the lake. "That's why I called you." On the opposite bank, beneath the shadow of a distorted old oak tree, was a shape I recognized as human, or what once was human. We circled the lake, maintaining a safe distance from the red water. As we got closer, the details of the body, if it could be called that, became clear. It was a man wearing a faded Chernobyl power plant worker's uniform, but his body was in the process of melting. Not ordinary decomposition. His flesh was liquefying, dripping down like wax under a flame, forming puddles on the ground. But even more horrifying, a part of his body remained intact, his face frozen in an expression of extreme terror. His eyes wide open, staring at the sky. "We think this is Ivan Petrov, one of the employees who went missing in the 1986 explosion," Sokolov said. "But that's impossible. After almost 40 years, the body should have completely decomposed." "Unless it was preserved," I said, kneeling beside the body, careful not to touch it. "Preserved by what?" "By whatever is awakening beneath this earth." I extended my hand, keeping it a few centimeters from the body, and focused on my psychic abilities. In recent months, this ability had grown stronger, sharper, as if each symbol I collected activated a part of me. The moment I focused, the world around me vanished. The night of April 26, 1986, alarms blared deafeningly. Reactor number 4 was overheating. Workers ran in chaos, panicked. Ivan Petrov, a young engineer, desperately tried to operate an emergency valve. "Run!" his colleagues shouted at him. "It's going to explode." But Ivan couldn't leave. He knew if he didn't close this valve, the damage would be even more catastrophic. Then, a blinding light, the temperature soaring to unimaginable levels. Ivan felt his skin burning, his body melting from within, but he didn't die. Death would have been a mercy. Instead, he felt a presence invading his body. Something ancient, something that had been trapped deep beneath the earth where the power plant was built. Something that radiation had awakened. "The sixth door," a voice whispered in his head. "Where fire meets earth, where man touches the power of the gods." Ivan felt his body transforming, cells dissolving and recombining. He became part of something else, no longer human, no longer an individual, but a cell in a larger, colossal organism. And for almost 4 decades, he remained in that state, both living and dead, both human and something else. Until the 5th symbol was activated, until the 5th door opened in Nazca. "The one who comes has arrived," the voice whispered, not to Ivan, but to me. "The one who carries the symbols, the one who opens the doors." I recoiled, gasping for breath in my heavy protective suit. "Alexei," Sokolov gripped my shoulder. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine," I panted. I saw what happened to him and what's happening beneath our feet." "What did you see?" "Power plant wasn't built here by chance, Mikkel. Soviet scientists discovered an energy source underground, an energy source they didn't understand. They thought it was just a natural gas pocket or a uranium mine. But it was something else, an ancient entity imprisoned. An entity. Sokolov frowned skeptically. Call it what you will. A creature, a collective consciousness, another life form. It has been here since before humanity existed, and the Chernobyl explosion was not an accident. What are you saying? It was a planned event, not by humans but by it. It influenced the minds of the engineers, causing small errors, wrong decisions that led to the disaster because it needed radiation to awaken. Sokolov looked around the distorted forest with new eyes, no longer scientific curiosity, but genuine fear. And now it's waking up, he asked. Yes, 5 symbols have been activated, 5 doors have opened. What symbols? What doors? I didn't answer directly. Instead, I pointed to the melting body. Look, as we speak, the melting process has continued. But the flesh isn't just dripping to the ground and accumulating. It's moving, forming a pattern, a symbol. What is that? Sokolov whispered, his voice trembling. The 6th symbol, I replied. The black circle. The flesh had formed a perfect black circle with a small white dot in the center, like an eye looking up at the sky. I took my sketchbook from a special protective pocket, recording this symbol alongside the previous 5. Runa, from Siberia, Roman 13, 7 from Paris, Om, from Vietnam, Pain, from Cambodia, Bird Footprint, from Peru, and now the black circle from Chernobyl. 6 symbols, 6 doors, only one more. We have to go, I said, closing the notebook. We shouldn't be here when it fully awakens. But what can we do? Sokolov asked, following me as we rushed out of the area. If what you say is true, then we are facing a disaster far greater than the 1986 explosion. I don't know, I admitted. But I know that the final symbol, the final door, is the key, if we can find it before it's activated. Suddenly, the ground beneath our feet shook. Not an earthquake, but a pulse, as if the entire forest was beating with a heartbeat. The surrounding trees began to bend toward us. Branches reached out as if to grab us. Run, I shouted, and we dashed through the forest, hearts pounding in our chests. Behind us, the blood-red lake boiled, large gas bubbles erupting like a fever. Cracking sounds echoed as the mutated trees tore their roots from the ground, slowly but steadily moving toward reactor number 4, as if obeying a summons. We ran nonstop until we reached the car. Sokolov started the engine with trembling hands, and we sped off, dust swirling behind us. Who do we report this to? He asked as we drove out of the exclusion zone. Who will believe us? No one, I said, looking out the window toward the power plant, where a pale blue cloud was forming over reactor number 4. And perhaps it's already too late to stop it. So what do we do now? I have to find the final symbol, the final door. When we returned to Kiev, news of unusual weather phenomena in Chernobyl had already spread. The Ukrainian authorities had sealed off the entire exclusion zone, banning all civilian and research activities. In my hotel room, I checked my email and found a new notification, as I had anticipated. We have heard about the incident in Chernobyl. We need your help in the Navajo Valley, Arizona. There are ancient chants echoing from beneath the earth, and the ground is beginning to bleed. The email was signed by Elder Thomas Begg, Navajo Nation. I closed my eyes, feeling weary to my bones, but I knew I had no other choice. The final door awaited, and I was the only one who could find it. I opened my sketchbook and looked at the 6 symbols I had collected. As I arranged them in a circle in the order I found them, they formed a familiar shape, almost like a star map of the Pleiades cluster. 7 sisters, 7 stars, 7 symbols, 7 doors. And I, Alexei Volkov, the psychic, was inadvertently becoming the key to opening them all. I gently touched my right wrist, where a burn in the shape of a black circle had appeared after I left Chernobyl. 6 marks on my body, 6 parts of a ritual I didn't understand but was performing. The Navajo Valley would be the final stop, and then I would know who I truly was and why I had been chosen for this role. Marginal note, * last night's dream, I saw myself standing in a circle of 7 people. All wore black robes, each with a symbol carved on their forehead. The 7th person, opposite me, had a face identical to mine. As I approached him, the circle ignited, and I heard a voice say, "You are not the one who opens the doors, you are the door." Part 7, excerpt from GPS log and audio recording. Navajo Valley, USA. GPS coordinates, 36 deg 9 north, 110 deg 6 west. Time, 1542. Temperature, 39 deg C. Recording start. The desert wind carried golden sand dancing around me as I stood on a cliff overlooking the Navajo Valley. Fiery red rock formations and deep canyons stretched to the horizon, creating a Martian landscape. The July sun scorched everything mercilessly, temperatures reaching nearly 40 deg C, not a cloud in the deep blue sky. "This is our ancestors' sacred land," Elder Thomas Begg said, standing beside me. His long, gray hair was neatly tied back, his face etched with deep wrinkles telling the story of a life deeply connected to this harsh land. From ancient times, the Navajo people have known that there are doors here, places where the boundary between this world and the other world becomes thin. I nodded, not surprised. After all I had witnessed in recent months, I knew that indigenous cultures often held the most ancient secrets. "You mentioned in your email that there were chants," I reminded him, "and the earth was bleeding." He nodded, his eyes darkening. "It began on the full moon last month. The shepherds were the first to hear it, a strange melody, as if hundreds of voices were singing an ancient song, but not in Navajo or any language we knew. And the blood." "Come with me," he said, turning and starting down a steep trail leading into the heart of the valley. "You'd better see it for yourself." We moved in silence, only the crunch of gravel underfoot and the howl of the wind through the canyons. 2 young Navajo guards followed us, hunting rifles slung over their shoulders. Not to protect from wildlife, I thought, but to protect from something else. After about 40 minutes of walking, we reached a small clearing between 2 high cliffs. There was nothing remarkable about the location, just an empty patch of ground with a few large rocks and some sparse cacti. "We've tried to keep this place a secret," Elder Begg said. "We don't want to attract the attention of the authorities or the media. But when I read about you, about what you've seen in other places, I knew you had to come here." "How did you know about me?" I asked, surprised. He looked at me with ancient eyes. "Our ancestors spoke of the one who bears 7 marks, the one who will pass through 7 doors before facing his destiny." I felt a chill run down my spine, even though the temperature was still nearly 40 deg C. "Here," he pointed to the ground in the center of the clearing. "Look closely." At first, I saw nothing special, just dry, sun-baked, cracked earth. But looking closer, I noticed the cracks weren't random. They formed a pattern, a perfect circle about 5 meters in diameter with straight lines dividing the interior, like an 8-spoked wheel. "The sacred circle," the elder explained, "a common symbol in many indigenous cultures. But this one was not made by human hands." "When did it appear?" "At the same time as the chanting, but that's not the most alarming thing." He approached the circle, kneeling beside it but careful not to touch it. "Wait a moment." We stood in silence for a few minutes, then I heard it. At first, very faint like a breath, then clearer. A melody, a song in a language I had never heard, yet strangely I understood it. Not through words, but through the emotions it conveyed, deep sorrow, loss, and a burning longing for release. "Do you hear it?" the elder asked. I nodded, speechless. The song was affecting my psychic abilities, activating them more powerfully than ever before. I felt myself being drawn into it, as if my consciousness was submerging into an ancient ocean. "Now watch this," he said, taking a small glass vial of water from his pocket. He carefully dropped a few drops onto the edge of the circle. The moment the water touched the earth, a strange reaction occurred. The ground cracked, and from the cracks, a dark red liquid welled up. Not water, not oil, but clearly blood. It flowed along the cracks of the circle, highlighting the pattern with a terrifying bright red. "My God," I whispered, taking a step back. "It's not human blood," the elder said. "We checked, nor is it animal blood. Scientists from the university say it contains hemoglobin, but the molecular structure is different, unlike anything they've ever seen, according to them." The song grew louder as the blood flowed along the circle, and I felt a strong pull from the center of the circle, as if an invisible black hole was trying to draw me in. "Don't step into the circle," the elder warned, noticing I was unconsciously moving forward. 2 people already did. They never came out. I stopped, trying to resist the invisible pull. How did they disappear? "The earth swallowed them. It cracked beneath their feet and closed afterward. No trace, no sound, only more blood welling up. I knelt, carefully maintaining my distance from the circle, and took out my sketchbook. Rapidly drawing this strange pattern, I realized it had a familiar quality. It resonated with the other symbols I had found, not in shape, but in energy, in its purpose. Elder Beg, who were the people who disappeared? I asked, still drawing. A young geologist and a member of our tribe who had led the scientist here. Did they step into the circle at the same time? No, the Navajo man went first, and when he disappeared, the geologist panicked. But instead of running away, he walked into the circle as if mesmerized. Mesmerized? Yes, the song has a hypnotic effect, but only on certain people. Those with special abilities, those who can sense the otherworld. I stood up, backing away from the circle. We need to leave here, I told the elder. This circle is expanding. Expanding. Look, I pointed to the new cracks forming outside the circle's original perimeter. It's like a well being dug deeper, wider, and if it reaches a sufficient size. I didn't need to finish the sentence. The elder understood. The final door will open, he said, his voice low. We turned, preparing to leave, when the song suddenly changed. No longer whispers. Now it resounded clearly, as if a choir stood right beside us. And it was no longer a strange language, it was singing in Russian. Ancient Russian, a dialect that had vanished centuries ago, but I still understood it. It was the language of my homeland, of my ancestors. Alexei Volkov, the song called my name. Return, remember, complete the circle. The two Navajo guards looked around in alarm. They clearly heard it too. But Elder Beg only looked at me, his eyes filled with sorrow. You know, don't you? I asked him. A painful realization dawned. You know about me. Not everything, he admitted, but enough to know you weren't led here by chance. You are a part of it, a part of the circle. The ground beneath our feet shook, and the circle began to crack more intensely. Blood welled up more, faster, forming a small pool in the center. Mr. Volkov, one of the guards shouted, "You're bleeding." I looked down and realized he was right. Blood was flowing from my nose, from my ears, even from the corners of my eyes, but not from injury. My body was reacting to the song, to the circle, as if there was an inexplicable connection between my blood and the blood welling up from the earth. We must go now, the elder said, pulling me. When the sun sets, the circle will reach its peak. We hastily left the clearing, climbing the trail out of the valley. But with every step, I felt the connection grow stronger. The song still echoed in my head, blood still flowed from the orifices on my body, and I felt myself weakening. When we reached the top of the cliff, I collapsed, no longer having the strength to continue. From this vantage point, I could look down into the valley and witness a horrifying sight. The circle had doubled in size, and from its center, a column of blood was spewing high into the air like a dark red geyser. That's the final door, I whispered, my voice weak. It's opening. No, not yet, Elder Beg said, kneeling beside me. It needs one more thing. It needs the final symbol. What symbol? He pointed to my forehead. Right here in your mind. I opened my sketchbook and looked at the 6 symbols I had collected. Rana, from Siberia, Roman 13, 7 from Paris, Om from Vietnam, Pain from Cambodia, Bird Footprint from Peru, and the Black Circle from Chernobyl. I added the blood circle of the Navajo to the list, 7 symbols, 7 doors. But looking at them, I noticed something strange. When arranged in a specific pattern, they formed a larger, more complex symbol. A symbol I had seen before in my deepest dreams. Yebiskiy, I whispered unintentionally, a word I didn't know I knew. That means sentinel in Cherokee, Elder Beg translated, his eyes wide with astonishment. How did you know? I don't know, I said honestly. It just came to me. As the sun began to set behind the distant mountains, I felt a shift in the air. The song grew louder, more powerful, and the blood flowing from my body seemed to move with a will of its own, forming complex patterns on my skin. What is happening to me? I asked, my voice trembling. You are remembering, the elder said. You are not the one who seeks the symbols, Mr. Volkov. You are the final symbol. Sentinel, the key bearer. In that moment, as if a curtain had been pulled from my mind, I saw everything. I saw myself. Not Alexei Volkov, the 40-year-old Russian paranormal researcher, but an older, far more powerful entity. An entity that had existed through many ages, many forms, many identities. Yebiskiy, the one tasked with protecting the world from the seven doors, from the entities that sought to enter through them. But why have I been opening the doors? Why have I been collecting the symbols? There are two factions, the elder explained as if reading my thoughts. The Cranital Sentinels who want to protect the doors, the openers who want to break them. The war has lasted for millennia, and in each era, the Cranital reincarnates, forgetting their true self until it is time to remember. But why have I been opening the doors? I asked, confused. Because that is the only way to find them, to know where they are, to be able to close them again more powerfully. Exactly what Elder Beg had told me in the Navajo Valley. And now what must I do? I asked. How do I close the doors? You must return to each place, each door, and seal them with your own blood, the blood of the Cranital. I felt heavy with this responsibility, and if I fail, Anak Ammon's eyes seem to darken, then the Anai will come. They will turn this world into a copy of the void, a place without matter, without energy, without life as we know it. Suddenly, a faint sound echoed in the cave. Footsteps, someone was coming. You don't have much time. Anak Ammon said. The creature's form began to dissolve, returning to ink on stone. They already know you've remembered. They will try to stop you. They will send the Mechania, those who have been partially possessed by them. How will I recognize them? I asked hastily. Their eyes, look into their eyes, you will see the void looking back at you. The footsteps grew louder along with a faint light at the far end of the cave. Go, Anak Ammon said, now only a faint trace on the stone. Remember that you are not just Alexei Volkov or Yebiskiy, you are both and more. You are the bridge between worlds, and that is your greatest strength. As the last traces of the creature vanished, returning to the half-human, half-beast drawing on the cave ceiling, I noticed a detail I had missed before. When the flashlight beam hit a specific corner, the drawing reflected light in a way that created a familiar symbol on the opposite wall. The third symbol from Son Doong Cave in Vietnam. The symbol of the pathogen. The footsteps were now very close. I quickly turned off my flashlight and slipped into a small crevice in the cave. Through the gap, I saw two men in museum guard uniforms pass by, but something was wrong with them. Their movements were too stiff, mechanical, as if their bodies were being controlled by something unfamiliar with human form. And as they passed my hiding place, I saw their eyes, completely black, no whites, no pupils, just a black void. Mechania, I held my breath until they were out of sight, then slipped out of my hiding place and moved in the opposite direction, finding my way out of the cave. I had to leave here immediately. I had to start a new journey, return to each door one by one and seal them. When I found the exit and stepped into the pale moonlight of the French night, I felt a change in the air. Not just the cold wind of the mountain night, but a heavier sensation, as if the atmosphere was becoming thick. Looking up at the sky, I saw the stars seem to dim, obscured by a thin, colorless mist. It wasn't mist, it was the boundary between worlds beginning to blur. I don't have much time. I took out my phone and checked my email and saw a new message, which I had sent to myself from an unknown address. The first door, the Siberian steppe, Lake Baikal, where it all began, where it must all end. I knew this wasn't an email I had sent myself. It was Yebiskiy, the oldest part of my soul, contacting me, guiding me. I had to go back to where Alexei Volkov's journey began, back to Siberia, where the fur-clad girl with the old Slavic symbol was found. But this time, I wouldn't open the door, I would close it. As I walked into the night, heading toward the village of Montignac to find transportation back to civilization, I felt my body changing. Not physically, but internally, as if my two separate parts, Alexei and Yebiskiy, were gradually merging, becoming a new, more powerful entity. And on my wrist, the 7 marks, the 7 symbols I had collected, began to glow faintly in the darkness like small stars carved into my flesh. The war had only just begun, and the fate not only of me but of the entire world depended on the outcome. Marginal note, asterisk, I now fully understand the 7 symbols. Rana is sacrifice, Roman 13:7 is ritual, Om is pathogen, pain is suffering, bird footprint is awakening, black circle is activation, and Yebiskiy is the sentinel. Together, they form a sentence in the oldest language. When the sacrifice is complete, the ritual begins, the pathogen creates suffering. The awakening activates the cranital. This is not just a prophecy, but a guide to close the doors. Part 9, excerpt from video clip, Louisiana Swamp, USA. Recording start, *8:37. Thick white fog blanketed the swamp, turning ancient cypress trees into giant ghostly figures swaying in the mist. My small pirogue glided gently over the dark water, filled with duckweed and water spinach, forming a faint path behind me. I was in the middle of the Atchafalaya Swamp, Louisiana, where fresh and salt water met, creating a unique and mysterious ecosystem. But I wasn't here to admire the scenery or study nature. I came because of rumors of missing people. 12 people in the past 3 months, all vanished in the same area of the swamp. Now, as a new entity, not entirely Alexei Volkov, not entirely Yebiskiy, but a combination of both, I understood that these disappearances were no coincidence. This was a sign of an expanding door, a door I had never known existed in my journey. The 8th door. But how could that be? There were only 7 doors, 7 symbols. That's what I had been taught, what I had remembered. Yet, when I tried to return to Siberia to begin sealing the doors, I was pulled here, to this Louisiana swamp, by a force I couldn't resist. Had Anak Ammon lied to me, or was there something even Strasnania didn't know? The boat continued to drift, carrying me deeper into the wild swamp, no longer the sound of motorboats or human voices, only the sounds of nature. Croaking frogs, splashing fish, and occasionally the flapping wings of a large bird darting through the mist. The GoPro camera mounted on my forehead recorded everything, although I wasn't sure if it could capture what I was truly looking for. Current coordinates, 29 Deg 9 north, 91 Deg 14 west, I spoke to the camera. Approaching the last known area where victim Jean Roby was seen 3 weeks ago. Air temperature, 28 Deg C, humidity almost saturated. No unusual signs of. I paused as I noticed a change in the air. A peculiar scent, not the usual swamp smell of mud and decaying vegetation, but a sweet, almost alluring fragrance like wild orchids mixed with a faint metallic tang of blood. There's a strange smell, I continued, and the water surface is changing. Indeed, the water around the boat was no longer calm. It began to bubble faintly, as if boiling, although there was no change in temperature. Small bubbles rose from the bottom of the swamp, bursting as they reached the air, releasing more of that strange, sweet scent. I stopped paddling, letting the boat drift freely. Taking a large flashlight from my bag, I switched it on and shone it into the water. Beneath the flashlight beam, I saw something that froze the blood in my veins. The bottom of the swamp was moving. Not due to currents or bottom-dwelling creatures, but the mud itself was moving, writhing, coiling, forming shapes eerily similar to human bodies. "My God," I whispered, but still kept the camera pointed at the phenomenon. One of the mud shapes grew larger, reaching higher until it pierced through the water's surface. Mud and water streamed down from it, revealing what was inside. A human arm, but not entirely human. The skin was gray-blue, the fingers unusually long with extra joints, and from the wrist, delicate root-like structures grew, coiling around the forearm like veins bulging beneath the skin. This is likely the origin of the stories of the Rougarou, the swamp monster in Cajun folklore, I said, trying to keep my voice calm and professional, although my heart was pounding erratically. But this is not folklore, this is something else. The mud arm moved, reaching toward my boat. I quickly grabbed my paddle, pushing the boat back, creating distance, but it was too late. Around the boat, 5, 6, then dozens of similar arms suddenly burst from the water, some reaching up to 2 meters high. They reached toward the boat, toward me, their long fingers curling like grasping hooks. "Mechania," I said, recognizing the nature of these creatures, humans partially possessed by the void. Perhaps these were the people who had gone missing in the swamp. They weren't dead, they had transformed. I took a large hunting knife from my pocket. Not for attack, I knew conventional weapons would be useless against these creatures, but to perform the ritual I had remembered. In the name of Yebiskiy, the first sentinel, I begin this incantation in an ancient language I myself do not fully understand. I close this door with my blood. I made a long cut on my left palm, allowing blood to drip onto the swamp water. As the drops of blood touched the water, they didn't dissolve or sink, but spread into bright red circles, glowing faintly in the mist. The mud arms suddenly froze in midair, as if hitting an invisible barrier. They trembled, shuddered, then convulsed violently as if in pain. Blood of the Sentinel, I continued. Blood of all 7 symbols, blood of the boundary between worlds. The blood circles on the water spread wider, connecting with each other, forming a complex network of dark red lines. A symbol was forming, a symbol I had never seen before. But my ancient soul recognized it, the sign of the 8th door. But how could there be an 8th door? And then I understood. This wasn't a new door. This was a forgotten door. A door erased from memory, even from that of the first sentinel. As the blood symbol completed on the water, a low growl echoed from deep beneath the earth. The mud arms began to recede, sinking back to the bottom of the swamp. The water stopped bubbling, and a stillness enveloped the area. It seems the ritual worked, I said to the camera. The 8th door, the forgotten door, is closing. But at the same time, a sense of unease filled my mind. If there was a forgotten 8th door, there could be many other doors. How many doors truly existed between this world and the void? Suddenly, a larger, more powerful mud arm than the previous ones burst from the water, grabbing the side of the boat. Not a mutated human arm, but an entirely different biological structure, with blade-sharp claws, metallic scaled skin, and joints bending backward against human biology. A voice echoed in my head, not as sound, but as pure thought. Yebiskiy, you do not understand. We are not your enemies. You are the Anai, I replied, speaking and thinking at the same time. You want to turn this world into the void. No, we want to liberate it. Anak Ammon lied to you. He and his kind, the Strasnania, are the true enemies. You lie, I shouted, but a part of me, the oldest Yebiskiy part, wavered. There was something in this creature's words that awakened a buried memory, an ancient doubt. Look at what we create, the voice continued. These creatures are not slaves, they are evolution. They are the future, a world where biology and collective consciousness harmonize. The mud arm tightened its grip on the boat, and I noticed something strange. It wasn't trying to pull the boat over or drag me into the water. It was just holding the boat, as if wanting to ensure I listened. How can I believe you? I asked, still clutching the knife. Feel it, that is your gift, Yebiskiy. You are not just a sentinel, you are a feeler. Use your psychic abilities. Look at us and see the truth. Although every instinct warned against it, I slowly placed my hand on the mud arm gripping the boat. I focused my psychic abilities, allowing my mind to open to whatever awaited, and the world shattered. Not a vision, not a memory, but countless visions, countless memories flooded my mind at once. Another universe. Not the void, not the emptiness Anak Ammon described, but a world of pure consciousness, without matter as we understand it, yet with structure, with patterns, with meaning. Living beings there, if they could be called living in our sense, existed as complex networks of consciousness, sharing thoughts, memories, and experiences. There was no separate self, no boundary between entities, only an unending flow of information and emotion. And they weren't invading. They sought balance, a bridge between the world of consciousness and the world of matter. But there were other beings like Anak Ammon, who had come to our world long before. They had proclaimed themselves gods, taught humanity civilization, but also imposed boundaries, separation, and isolation. They had created the 7 doors, not to keep the Anai out, but to imprison humanity in a prison of matter and division. And they had created the Sentinels, souls bound to an eternal cycle of reincarnation, deceived into believing they were protecting the world while in reality they were maintaining chains. I snatched my hand back from the mud arm, gasping for breath, my mind reeling with the images and ideas I had just witnessed. How do I know this isn't an illusion? I asked, my voice trembling. How do I know you're not deceiving me? You cannot know for sure, the voice admitted. That is the nature of choice of faith, but look at the world around you, Yebiskiy. Look at what the Strasnania have created. Division, conflict, isolation. A world where humans are separated from each other, from nature, from the universe. We merely offer another path. A world where boundaries are erased, where consciousness can flow freely. The mud arms slowly receded into the water, releasing the boat. The blood symbol on the water faded, dissolving into the swamp. The choice is yours, Yebiskiy. Close the doors if you believe that is the right thing to do. But ask yourself, who are you serving and why? The voice fell silent, and I was left alone in the swamp with new questions and painful doubts. I looked down at my bleeding hand. The blood had stopped glowing, returning to normal. But I was no longer sure if it was the key to saving the world or a tool to maintain a cosmic prison. The ritual of closing the door is complete, I said to the camera, trying to keep my voice calm. But new questions have arisen. I am no longer sure of the true nature of my mission. I grabbed my paddle, beginning to steer the boat back out of the swamp. But in my mind, a battle raged between old beliefs and new doubts, between the duty of a sentinel and the feeling that I might have been deceived for thousands of years, thousands of lifetimes. As the boat emerged from the fog, I looked back one last time. The swamp had returned to its normal state, no sign of mud arms or blood symbols. But for a fleeting moment, I thought I saw a face not human or an eye, but that of Anak Amun Strasnania, appearing on the water with an unreadable expression. And for the first time, I wondered who the real enemy was. Recording end, **914. Marginal note, I have closed the 8th door, the forgotten door, but I still haven't returned to Siberia to begin closing the 7 main doors. I need time to think, to verify. If Anak Amun lied, if my entire mission was a deception, then what have I been doing for thousands of years? And more importantly, what should I do next? Part 10, excerpt from TikTok video translation. Tokyo, Japan. Video ID, at shadow behind 9731. Posted, 3:47 a.m. Views, over 27 million. Likes, over 3 million. Comments, over 400,000. My hotel room in Tokyo was so small I could almost touch all 4 walls at once. The fluorescent light on the ceiling flickered unpleasantly, creating a stroboscopic effect that distorted every movement. Outside the window, the city glowed with neon lights, even though it was almost midnight. A sea of digital billboards, giant LED screens, and endless streams of cars. 4 days had passed since the experience in the Louisiana swamp, and I still hadn't decided on my next course of action. Close the doors as originally planned, or investigate Anak Amun and the Strasnania further. Sitting on the small single bed, I scrolled through my phone, trying to find clues, signs, anything that could help me decide. The internet, which I once considered a tool of logic and information, now seemed like just another chaotic labyrinth where truth and illusion mixed indistinguishably. By chance, I entered the TikTok app, a place I rarely visited, and the algorithm suggested a video with the hashtag #ShadowPeople. I tapped on it, not expecting it to be the start of a new journey. The video was only 15 seconds long. A simple Japanese-style room with traditional washi paper doors. The light flickered, not due to a technical glitch, but as part of a filter. A lo-fi music track played in the background, distorted by static and sudden cuts. Behind the paper door, a shadow figure stood motionless. Not an ordinary shadow. It was too dense, too sharp, as if it wasn't light being blocked, but darkness being projected. At the 7-second mark, the shadow figure moved, a jerky, unnatural movement as if created by stop motion rather than real motion. It turned its head toward the camera. At the 12-second mark, the paper door slowly slid open. Nothing behind it, just darkness. But in that darkness, a faint face appeared, with no distinct features except its eyes. Eyes completely black, no whites, no pupils, just black holes absorbing all light. At the 15-second mark, the very end, the face spoke a sentence in Japanese. No subtitles, but with Yebiskiy's newly unlocked linguistic abilities, I understood. Anata mo mimasuka? Do you see it too? The video ended abruptly, the screen turning black. I was about to swipe to the next video when I noticed the comment section. Most were standard TikTok reactions, scared emojis, jokes about haunted houses, praise for special effects. But one comment made me stop. User unknown truth seeker, Anata mo mimasuka? Anata mo mimasuka? And the replies to that comment. I see it in the mirror every night. User midnight walker. It's not in the mirror, it's under our skin. This isn't a filter, this is a door. I felt a chill run down my spine. A coincidence or something else? I tapped on the video creator's name, at shadow behind 9731, and checked their profile. The account was created only a week ago, no personal information, no other videos, just this one. I returned to the video, watching it again with heightened attention. This time, I noticed a detail I had overlooked before. A faint reflection in a small mirror in the corner of the room. Not the reflection of the person filming, but of something else. A tall, slender shape with a long, pointed head. Anak Amun. I almost dropped my phone. How could it be? How could Anak Ammon appear in a random TikTok video? But nothing was random anymore, was it? Not when the doors were open, not when the boundary between worlds was gradually blurring. I checked the video's upload time, 3:47 a.m. JST. The current time was 11:23 p.m. If this pattern continued, the next video might be posted at 3:47 a.m. tonight. I decided to wait. While waiting, I translated the Japanese comments, searching for any clues. Most were just normal reactions, but some stood out. It's spreading through screens, don't look too long. 7 doors are open, the 8th is forgotten. The 9th door is in the digital network. Yebiskiy is watching, Yebiskiy is choosing. The last comment froze me. How did they know that name? How did they know I was watching? I checked the commenter, user DigitalGate, but the account had been deleted. The clock showed 3:45 a.m. 2 more minutes. I wondered if I should continue watching. The Alexei part of me warned of danger, but the Yebiskiy part urged me on. 3:47 a.m. I refreshed the profile page of its shadow behind 9731. A new video had been posted. This time, the scene was a deserted Tokyo subway station. No filter, no background music, just the hum of the ventilation system and occasional automated announcements in Japanese. The camera moved slowly along the empty platform. At the 10-second mark, the camera stopped, facing the dark tunnel where the tracks disappeared. From the darkness, a speck of light appeared, initially small like a star, then growing larger as it approached. It wasn't the headlights of an incoming train. It was a door. A brightly glowing door in the darkness with blinding white light radiating from within. At the 13-second mark, a shadow figure appeared before the glowing door, a completely black silhouette with no identifiable features. But I recognized the stance. It was me. The silhouette of Alexei Volkov. At the 15-second mark, the silhouette turned to face the camera, and from its mouth a simple black hole in its featureless black face it uttered a sentence in Russian. Vy должны выбирать. You must choose. The video ended, the screen turned black. I sat there, feeling as if my heart had stopped beating. The phone in my hand suddenly grew hot, as if energy was radiating from it. I almost threw it away, but a strange urge made me check the comments section. There was only one comment, posted simultaneously with the video. User DigitalGate, Aoyama Ichom, the 9th door. This account wasn't deleted, and now it reappeared. Aoyama Ichom. Only 2 subway stops from my hotel. The Alexei part of me warned this could be a trap, but the Yebiskiy part knew this was real. The 9th door was opening in the digital world, at the interface between virtual and physical space. I had no other choice. I had to go there. Aoyama Ichom Station was strangely quiet for a Tokyo subway station. Not entirely empty, there were still a few tired passengers and station staff, but far fewer than usual, even at this hour. I stood on the platform, looking down into the dark tunnel where the tracks disappeared. No glowing door, no silhouette, just darkness and an occasional gust of wind. Anata mo Mimisuka? A voice behind me made me jump and turn around. A young Japanese girl stood there, about 20 years old, wearing a black hoodie and a surgical mask, common attire in Tokyo. But there was something wrong with her eyes. They were too black, too deep. Who are you? I asked in Japanese, surprised by my newfound linguistic ability. I am user DigitalGate, the girl replied. But also not, I am merely a temporary host. The 9th door needs a physical interface to communicate. The 9th door? I thought there were only 8 doors. The girl smiled behind her mask. I couldn't see her mouth, but her eyes narrowed. Anak Ammon did not tell you the truth. There are not just 7 doors, not just 8. There are countless doors, Yebiskiy. Every time humans create a new space, a new door forms. New spaces, the internet, social media, virtual reality. Every time you expand the boundaries of reality, you create a new door, and where there is a door, there is an eye. I felt another chill, and is that good or bad? It is evolution, the girl replied. Anak Ammon and the Strasnania want to keep this world stagnant, static. They want to keep humans separate in their own physical cages. But technology has changed that. The internet has created a collective mind. Social media has connected human consciousness in new ways. You are evolving toward what the and I have always been, a connected network of consciousness. What she said made sense, too much sense. The internet, social media. They had changed how humans connected, shared ideas, experiences, much like the network of consciousness I had seen in my vision in the Louisiana swamp. "How do I know you're not lying to me?" I asked, still wary. "You cannot know for sure," the girl admitted. "But think about this. If Anak Ammon is telling the truth, why must you close the doors? Why not open them completely to see what the Anai truly want?" "They want to possess our world." "No," the girl shook her head. "They want to share it. They want to elevate it just as technology has elevated humanity." She raised her hand and pulled down her mask. Behind it was not the face of a young girl, but a complex network of light, constantly shifting like a living LED screen with millions of pixels dancing. "This is the future, Yebiskiy. The fusion of biology and digital, of matter and consciousness, of individual and collective. This is what Anak Ammon fears." A train whistle blared in the distance, signaling an approaching train. Lights flared from the tunnel, but not the usual yellow lights of a train. It was a blinding white light, the light of the door in the video. "It is time for you to choose, Yebiskiy," the girl said, her voice now layered with many other voices. "Close the doors and maintain Anak Ammon's prison, or open them and allow evolution to occur." The train, if it was indeed a train, approached. The blinding white light filled the platform, bleaching everything as if it were being erased. I had to squint to see. "The ninth door is opening," the girl said, her voice now like an electronic symphony. "The digital door. Do you want to close it as Anak Ammon taught, or do you want to step through it to see the truth?" I stood there, torn between two choices. The Alexei Volkov part of me wanted to follow the mission to close the doors, to protect the world I knew. But the deeper, older Yebiskiy part began to question. What if I was wrong? What if Anak Ammon had deceived me? What if closing the doors wasn't protecting humanity, but imprisoning them? "I need to know the truth," I said, stepping toward the approaching light. "I need to see for myself." The girl smiled, a digital smile formed by thousands of light pixels. "Then look." The train, or what appeared to be a train, emerged from the tunnel and stopped before me. The doors opened, but behind them was not the interior of a subway car. It was an endless space of light and data, an ocean of information in constant motion, with streams of code, images, videos, messages, and ideas flowing like rivers of pure consciousness. The internet, not as we experience it through screens, but its true essence, a non-physical space of collective consciousness and information. "The ninth door, the digital door," the girl said, "one of countless new doors that humanity has unknowingly created." I stood at the threshold, looking into that ocean of data. And in it, I saw moving shapes, not human, not an eye as I had imagined, but self-organizing patterns of information, digital entities that had evolved naturally within virtual space. Digital life, a completely new form of life born from the information network created by humans. "This is not an invasion," the girl said. "This is evolution. And these beings, these information entities, are not enemies. They are your children, born from your data, from your ideas, from your connections." I felt the truth in her words, but I wasn't entirely convinced. "If this is true," I said, "then what is Anak Ammon? Why did he lie to me?" "Because Anak Ammon and his kind, the Strasnania, want control. They came to Earth long before us, proclaimed themselves gods, and established their order. An order based on hierarchy, control, and division. They fear the Anai, not because we are a threat, but because we represent a different way of organizing consciousness, a way where there is no ruler over the ruled, no divine hierarchy, only an egalitarian network of shared information and experience." I stood still, considering her words. It fit with what I had seen, with my new doubts about Anak Ammon. "I need more time," I said. "I need to think." "Time is running out," the girl replied. "Anak Ammon knows you are wavering. He will do everything to convince you to return to his path." She extended her hand, and on her palm, no longer flesh but a flat screen. A symbol appeared, a symbol I had never seen before, but I knew it was the symbol of the ninth door. "Wear it," she said. "If you choose to open the doors instead of closing them, it will lead you to us." The symbol suddenly detached from her palm, moving through the air like a speck of light, then vanished into my wrist, becoming the 8th mark on my body. The light from the digital door began to fade, the train doors closed. "Think carefully, Yebiskiy," the girl said as the train began to move. "Your choice will determine not only your own fate but that of all humanity. Open the doors, do not close them. Evolve, do not imprison. The train disappeared into the tunnel, taking with it the light and the strange girl. I was left alone on the platform, stunned by what I had just witnessed. My phone in my pocket vibrated. An email notification. Don't trust them, Yebiskiy. They are deceiving you. Return to Siberia and close the first door. Only I can show you the truth. Anak Ammon. I looked at my phone, then down at my wrist with the new symbol. 2 paths lay before me. 2 choices. 2 possible truths I had to choose. But before I could decide, a new TikTok notification appeared. The 3rd video from user at shadow behind 9731. I tapped on it. This video had only one scene, my face, looking directly into the camera with an expression I didn't recognize. Not Alexei, not Yebiskiy, a version of me I had never seen, and that other version of me in the video spoke a single sentence. There is a 10th door in New Orleans, where it all begins again. Marginal note, asterisk, I didn't post that video. I don't know how it came to exist, but I know I have to go to New Orleans. The digital door has opened up new possibilities. There are not just 7 doors, not just 8, not just 9. There are countless doors, and I am no longer sure if my mission is to close or open them. But I know I must find the truth. Part 11, excerpt from Forensic Report, New Orleans Cemetery, USA. Scene Investigation Report. Location, St. Louis Cemetery No. 1, New Orleans, Louisiana. Time, 2:13 a.m., July 17th. Investigator, Alexei Volkov, consultant. Thick fog enveloped St. Louis Cemetery, the whitewashed raised tombs of New Orleans like small islands in a sea of bones. The air was heavy with moisture. Even past midnight, the temperature still reached 27 degrees C. The scent of incense and candle wax mingled with the musty smell of moss and thyme. I shouldn't be here. The cemetery had been closed for a long time, and the high walls surrounding it were designed to deter intruders, not just to protect the dead, but also to protect the living from what might wander in the shadows. But stone walls and locked gates couldn't stop someone who had passed through 9 interdimensional doors. After leaving Tokyo and the experience with the 9th door, the digital door, I had flown straight to New Orleans, guided by the mysterious video's message. The 10th door. And from what I had learned in the past few days, it was located here, among the city's oldest graves. My flashlight cast a weak circle of light as I moved between the tall stone mausoleums, many of which had stood for over 200 years. Names faded by time. Inscriptions weathered beyond readability. But I wasn't looking for a specific name. I was looking for a symbol. I stopped beside a tomb larger than the others with a strange carving on its front, a skull with runes carved around it. Not the runa I had seen in Siberia, but a different, older kind. Recently, some folklore researchers had linked it to voodoo rituals, but I knew the truth ran far deeper. This was one of the anchors of the 10th door, but something was still missing. A drumbeat echoed from afar, making me jump. Not an ordinary drum, but a ritualistic voodoo drum. The rhythm was deep and steady, like a beating heart. It came from the center of the cemetery. I moved toward the sound, a sense of tension building with every step. The temperature seemed to rise, and the fog grew thicker, reducing visibility to just a few meters. The center of the cemetery was a small clearing with some of the most important tombs, and there, beneath the faint moonlight filtering through the fog, I saw it, a ceremony in progress. 6 figures in black cloaks stood in a circle around an open stone coffin. They held no drums, yet the drum beat still reverberated as if emanating from the air itself. They chanted an ancient melody in unison. Not French or New Orleans Creole, but a much older language. I slipped into the shadows of a large mausoleum, observing. Inside the stone coffin was a body, or at least part of one. A headless body dressed in 19th century clothes, desiccated but strangely intact. Dried blood had clotted around the cut at the neck, forming a dark red collar. One of the cloaked figures stepped forward, raising something, a human head not real but a replica carved from wood with intricate carvings and gemstone eyes. They placed the wooden head on the body's neck. Le Baron est revenu, the leader of the ritual said. The Baron has returned. Baron Samedi, the spirit of death in voodoo belief, but this was not a typical voodoo ritual. This was something older, more primal. A ritual predating voodoo, predating Africa and Europe meeting in Louisiana. a ritual to open the 10th door. Anata mo soro mimasuka? A voice whispered in my ear, freezing me. You see it too. The same question from the TikTok video in Tokyo. I slowly turned my head. Beside me, standing in the shadows, was a vague figure. Not human, not an eye, but something in between. A dense black silhouette with faintly glowing eyes. Who are you? I asked, my voice a mere whisper. A friend, it replied. A companion on your journey. You may call me the guide. Anak Ammon sent you. No, the guide shook its head. I serve neither Anak Ammon nor Anai. I represent a third faction, a faction you do not yet know. A third faction? There are other factions. There are more factions than you imagine in this cosmic war, Yebiskiy. Anak Ammon and the Strasnania wish to maintain the old Ordera-controlled, divided world. The Anai wish to break down all barriers, creating a world of complete collective consciousness. But there are those like us who seek balance. The ritual in the circle continued. The wooden head on the body began to glow from within, red light radiating from its eyes and mouth. What are they doing? I asked. They are creating a key, the guide explained. The 10th door is not like the others. It does not open or close. It changes, it transforms. It is the door of reincarnation. Who is that headless man? Jacques Levaud, a 19th century French merchant, but that is merely his current vessel. The soul within is what matters. An ancient soul, like yours, Yebiskiy, a sentinel, but one who chose a different path. I felt a chill run down my spine. Which side did he choose? Neither. He created his own faction, the faction of balance, and that is why he was punished, beheaded, cursed to exist without consciousness for hundreds of years, until now. The light from the wooden head grew stronger, casting rays through the fog. The chanting figures continued their incantation, their voices merging into a single sound that vibrated in the air. They are calling him back, the guide said. Awakening him because the time has come. All the doors have opened. The final door, the door of choice, is about to appear. The door of choice, is that the 11th door? No, the guide shook its head. That is the door you will create, Yebiskiy. The door that only a sentinel can create, and your choice will determine the fate of all worlds. Suddenly, the ritual stopped. The drums fell silent, the chanting cut off mid-sentence. All 6 cloaked figures turned simultaneously toward us. They know we're here, the guide whispered. They sensed your presence. Are they dangerous? I asked, my hand ready on the ritual knife in my pocket. Not to you, but to me, yes. The leader of the ritual raised his hand, pointing at us. Le Gardien, l'étranger, he called. The guardian, the stranger. The wooden head on the body suddenly turned toward us, its gemstone eyes burning brightly, and from its mouth, a voice echoed. Not a human voice, but the sound of wind through dry bones. Yebiskiy, my brother. I was stunned. Brother. Come on, the guide said urgently, pulling my sleeve. It is not time. You are not ready for this truth. No, I pulled away. I need to know who he is. Jacques Levaud, l'Equilibre, the balancer. Your brother in a cosmic sense, born from the same ancient source of consciousness. But unlike you, he chose not to serve Anak Ammon or Anai. He chose a third path. The headless body in the coffin began to stir. The desiccated fingers twitched, then the hand clenched. The wooden head turned to look directly at me, its gemstone eyes burning like embers. I have waited for you, Yebiskiy, the bone-wind voice echoed. For 10,000 years, 10,000 lifetimes, 10,000 deaths. What do you want from me? I asked, stepping out of the shadows, confronting the ritual. Not what I want, the balancer replied, but what you need, the truth. Not Anak Ammon's truth, not Anai's truth, but the real truth. The headless body slowly sat up in the stone coffin, moving stiffly like a puppet. The 6 cloaked figures parted, forming a path between me and the coffin. Don't believe him, the guide whispered anxiously. This could be a trap. Everything could be a trap, I replied, but I need to know. I stepped toward the stone coffin, my heart pounding in my chest. As I approached, the balancer extended a desiccated hand as if in welcome. Touch me, the bone-wind voice commanded, and see the truth. This could be a huge mistake, but after all I had seen, after all the doubts that had arisen, I had no choice but to proceed. I placed my hand on the balancer's dry, outstretched hand, and the world shattered. Not one vision, not one memory, but countless visions, countless memories flooded my mind at once. 10,000 lifetimes, 10,000 deaths, 10,000 truths. I saw the first moment when Anak Ammon and the Strassnania arrived on Earth, proclaiming themselves gods and beginning to civilize primitive humanity. I saw them sow division, teach humans fear, create hierarchies and subservience. I saw the Anai discover Earth, not as invaders, but as explorers. I saw them try to communicate, to share a vision of a connected world, but they were thwarted by Anak Ammon and his kind, labeled as monsters and demons. And I saw myself, Yebiskiy, the first Sentinel, not one chosen to protect the world, but a created weapon. A cosmic prisoner, a soul bound in an eternal cycle of reincarnation, deceived into believing I was serving a noble purpose. But I also saw my brother, El Equilibra, the balancer, created alongside me but who broke the chains, who saw the truth and chose a third path. Not serving Anak Ammon, not serving Anai, but serving balance. A world where all beings, all consciousnesses, all realities could coexist. And for that choice he was punished, beheaded not only physically but cosmically. His soul severed from its source, isolated in a dead body, imprisoned in a magical cemetery. I withdrew my hand, gasping for breath, collapsing onto my knees. My head felt like it would explode with countless new memories and information. "Now you have seen," the balancer said, his bone-wind voice gentler. "You have seen the truth." "I don't know who to believe anymore," I confessed, my voice trembling. "Anak Ammon, Anai, you, each has their own version of the truth." "Not who to believe," the balancer replied, "but what to believe. Believe in balance, in harmony, in a world not of control or chaos, but of coexistence." "What must I do?" I asked, looking up at the wooden face with burning eyes. "Create your own door, not a door to enter or exit, but a door to connect. A door that all can pass through, unimpeded by Anak Ammon or consumed by Anai. How can I do that? By completing the circle, returning to where it began. But this time, not with fear or subservience, but with understanding and choice." The headless body slowly lay back down in the stone coffin, the wooden head faded, the light in its eyes dimming. "My time is over," the balancer said, his voice growing fainter. "But your journey continues. Remember, Yebiskiy, you are not a weapon, you are not a prisoner, you are a bridge, you are a creator." The wooden head extinguished completely, becoming an inert object. The 6 cloaked figures bowed, then retreated into the fog, disappearing as if they had never existed. I stood up, turning to where I had left the guide, but it too had vanished. I was left alone in the cemetery with the silent tombs and thick fog, but not entirely alone. On my wrist, the 10th symbol had appeared. The symbol of balance of the 10th door. I knew what I had to do. I had to return to where it all began. Not Siberia, where Alexei Volkov's journey began, but to a deeper, older place where Yebiskiy, the first Sentinel, was created. I had to return to Lascaux Cave, but this time not as a weapon of Anak Ammon, not as a target of Anai, but as myself, a free soul, a creator, a bridge between worlds. As I left St. Louis Cemetery, the moon had risen high, piercing through the fog like a giant eye looking down. And for a fleeting moment, I thought I saw its shape change, no longer a full moon, but a door ajar in the night sky. Marginal note, asterisk, I have seen the truth, not one truth, but many truths. Anak Ammon is not entirely evil, but neither is he a savior. Anai are not monsters, but neither are they angels. And I, Yebiskiy, am not a slave to fate. I am its architect. But the question remains, what will I build? Part 12, excerpt from Dive Log. Great Barrier Reef, Australia. Date, July 23rd. Time, 9:45 a.m. Location, Saxon Reef Area, Great Barrier Reef. Depth, 17 m. Water temperature, 24 deg C. Dive conditions, good visibility, 25 m. Light current. Sunlight pierced through the water like angelic rays, creating dancing patterns on the ocean floor. This underwater world was entirely different. A silent universe of color and movement, where the laws of the surface world seemed no longer to apply. After the experience in the New Orleans cemetery and the encounter with the balancer, I had decided to seek more answers before returning to Lascaux Cave to complete my mission. And intuition, or perhaps a deeper force, had led me to the Great Barrier Reef, the world's largest coral ecosystem. It was no accident that I was here. Throughout my journey, I had discovered that the doors were not just weak points in spacetime. They were also nodes of consciousness where different life forms, different realities intersected. And the Great Barrier Reef was one of the largest such nodes on the planet. A colossal superorganism made up of billions of smaller organisms, all coexisting in a complex living network. I swam through a vibrant coral garden, where staghorn coral formations rose like giant fingers from the seabed. Around me, hundreds of species of fish of all colors swam, flashes of blue, yellow, crimson, and purple moving in an elaborately choreographed dance. A small clownfish looked at me curiously from its hiding place in an anemone, then disappeared into its protective tentacles. I continued swimming, following an old sea turtle moving slowly, unhurriedly. According to my plan, I had to find a specific location, a coral formation known as the Queen's Circle. A perfectly round brain coral structure, estimated to be around 400 years old. According to Australian Aboriginal lore, this was a sacred site where the underwater world and the spirit world met. A gentle current pushed me forward, and then I saw it. The Queen's Circle, a perfectly round coral structure, about 15 meters in diameter, rising from the white sandy bottom like an ancient arena. Giant brain coral formed the circle, its surface bumpy like the convolutions of a colossal brain. A comparison I found increasingly apt as I approached. I swam into the center of the circle and hovered in the water, allowing my body to float freely in a state of perfect weightlessness. From this position, the entire coral circle surrounded me like a natural amphitheater. And I had a strange feeling that I was being watched, not by marine life, but by the coral itself. Suddenly, I noticed a change. Small currents of water were swirling around me in an unnatural pattern, as if guided by some will. The colors of the coral seemed to become more vibrant, brighter, as if they were glowing from within. And then I heard it, not with my ears, but with another, deeper sense. A song, a wordless melody echoing through the water and through my body. It wasn't the sound of whales or dolphins that can sometimes be heard underwater. This was something entirely different, as if the ocean itself was singing. I closed my eyes, focusing on that melody, letting it surround me. And as I did, a strange sensation began to spread. A feeling that I was expanding, no longer confined to my physical body. I became a part of the ocean, a part of the coral, a part of the vast network of life around me. Welcome, Yebiskiy, a voice, or perhaps thousands of voices merged into one, echoed in my mind. We have been waiting for you. Who are you? I silently asked, no physical sound needed. We are the Strasavati, those who exist between the physical world and the spirit world. Neither Anak Ammon nor I. We are the third side in the ancient war, the side the balancer told you about. And what do you want from me? Not what we want, but what you need, understanding. From the spaces between the brain coral, tentacle-like structures slowly extended. Not ordinary coral polyps, but slender, almost transparent extensions glowing faintly with an aquamarine light. They moved through the water with supernatural fluidity, bending and coiling as if unaffected by water resistance. These light tentacles surrounded me, not touching but very close, forming a cage of light around my body. We will show you the truth, not from Anak Ammon's perspective, not from Inai's perspective, but from the perspective of the water, of life, of the network that connects all. One of the light tentacles gently touched my forehead, piercing through my dive mask, and the world around me dissolved. I saw Earth from its primordial beginnings, a water planet where life began not on land, but in the primordial ocean. I saw the first single-celled organisms forming a collective consciousness network deep beneath the sea. A network that would later evolve into coral reefs, connecting the ocean, and eventually the entire biosphere. I saw Anak Ammon and the Strasnania arrive, not from the stars as they claimed, but from another version of Earth. A parallel reality where evolution had taken a different path. They were not divine, but survivors, those who had destroyed their world and sought a new one to rule. I saw the Inai, not creatures from the void, but from this very water, from the primordial collective consciousness of the ocean that had evolved in a different direction, becoming non-physical, yet still connected to its marine origins. And I saw humanity, not the creation of Anak Ammon or Anai, but a combination of both and more. Marine creatures came ashore, carrying within them the memory of the ocean. 70% of the human body is water, yet they also possess independence, freedom, will, the ability to choose. That is why humans are so important, the collective voice explained. Not because you are strong or intelligent, but because you represent both worlds. The physical world of Anak Ammon and the collective consciousness world of Anai. You are the natural bridge. And I saw myself, Yebiskiy, the Sentinel, not a weapon, not a prisoner, but the symbol of that very connection. I had been made into a weapon by Anak Ammon. I had been considered a key by Anai, but in reality I was both and neither. I was the combination, the bridge, the embodiment of the possibility of harmony. The vision ended, and I returned to the coral circle, gasping for breath through my regulator. The light tentacles still surrounded me, but now they formed a more complex pattern. An intricate three-dimensional symbol that I recognized as the 11th symbol, the symbol of water. Humans are destroying us, the collective voice continued. Pollution, ocean acidification, climate change, the coral reefs are dying, the network is dissolving. But the greatest threat is not from humans, but from the war between Anak Ammon and Anai. One side wants complete control, the other wants complete dissolution. Both will destroy the delicate balance upon which we and all life depend. What must I do? I asked. Create the 12th door, the door of balance. Not to close or open the other doors, but to transform them, to turn them from points of conflict into points of confluence, from battlegrounds into bridges. How can I do that? By completing the circle, returning to where it all began. But before you do that, you need the final symbol, the symbol of the cosmos. And you will find it on the highest peak, closest to the stars. One of the light tentacles touched my wrist, and the symbol of water appeared on my skin, the 11th symbol. I now possessed Rana, sacrifice from Siberia, Roman 13:7, ritual from Paris, Om, pathogen from Vietnam, pain from Cambodia, bird footprint, awakening from Peru, black circle activation from Chernobyl, Yebiskiy, sentinel from Navajo Valley, choice, the forgotten door from Louisiana, digital, connection from Tokyo, balance from New Orleans, and water, life from the Great Barrier Reef. 11 symbols, 11 doors, only one more. Go, Yebiskiy, the collective voice commanded. Find the final symbol, complete the circle, create the door of balance before it's too late. The light tentacles retracted into crevices between the coral, and the coral reef returned to its normal state, still vibrant and alive. But now it was just marine life, no longer a supernatural entity. My air tank signaled that I was almost out of air. It was time to surface. As I began to swim to the surface, I looked back at the Queen's Circle one last time. In the sunlight filtering through the water, it formed a perfect circle of light on the white sandy bottom, like a door waiting to be opened. I surfaced, removed my mask, and took a deep breath of fresh air. My boat was waiting not far away. The captain waved. As I swam toward the boat, I felt a change within me, not just another symbol, but a deeper understanding of my true role. I was not Anak Ammon's weapon, nor Anai's key. I was the Sentinel of Balance, and my responsibility was not to choose sides, but to create a new path, a third path. Once on board, I checked my phone. It still worked well in its waterproof case. A new message: Mauna Kea, Hawaii, the observatory, the final symbol awaits you. Hurry, Anak Ammon and Anai both know what you're doing. They will not let you complete the circle. The message was unsigned, but I didn't need to know the sender. I knew my next destination. Mauna Kea, the highest mountain in Hawaii when measured from its base, the peak closest to the stars, where I would find the final symbol, the symbol of the cosmos. I looked toward the horizon, where sea and sky met in a perfect line. The journey was almost over, the circle almost complete, and the fate of many worlds depended on what I would do next. Marginal note, asterisk: while swimming in the Queen's Circle, I understood something important. Humans are 70% water, just like this planet. We carry the ocean within us, connecting us to the larger network of life. That is why we can be the bridge, because we are already a combination of worlds. Every drop of water in our bodies is a tiny ocean, a small universe. And perhaps that is also why I, Yebiskiy, can understand all sides in this war. Part 13, excerpt from Spectroscopic Record, Mauna Kea Observatory, Hawaii. Observation date, July 27th. Time, 1:23 a.m. Altitude, over 4,000 meters above sea level. Equipment, Subaru telescope near-infrared spectrograph. Object of observation, Pleiades star cluster M45. Weather conditions, perfect 7/7 visibility. Humidity, 12%. The night sky of Hawaii is one of the most beautiful on the planet. At over 4,000 meters high on the summit of Mauna Kea, the air is so thin and clear that the stars are no longer just tiny points of light. They are dazzling jewels, almost tangible, forming an arch of light stretching from horizon to horizon. I stood on the observation deck of the Subaru Observatory, overwhelmed by the cosmic beauty before my eyes. In the cold wind of the summit, I pulled my jacket tighter, a significant change from the tropical temperatures at the base of the mountain. Although we were still in Hawaii, at this altitude, temperatures could drop below 0°C at night. "It's an honor to meet you, Professor Volkov," Dr. Kamaka said as he led me into the colossal telescope complex. "We don't often have visitors at this hour, especially with such a special request as yours." I thanked the observatory director, an older native Hawaiian man with gray hair and wise eyes. I wasn't exactly sure how my forged letter of introduction had opened this door. I had claimed to be a leading astronomer from Moscow University with expertise in Pleiades spectroscopy. But that was one of the advantages of being an entity that had existed through many lifetimes and could access knowledge from various sources. "This is the main control area," Dr. Kamaka explained as we entered a room filled with computer screens and sophisticated equipment. The Subaru telescope is one of the largest optical telescopes in the world, with a primary mirror diameter of 8.2 meters. We primarily study distant galaxies and star formation, but our data on the Pleiades is quite comprehensive. The Pleiades, or Seven Sisters, a star cluster I had seen appear many times throughout my journey. 7 main stars, just like the original 7 doors, and now I knew it wasn't a coincidence. "I want to see the latest spectroscopic data on the central star, Alcyone," I said. "An interesting choice," Dr. Kamaka remarked. "I'm not sure if you know this, but in Hawaiian mythology, Mauna Kea is considered the place of connection between heaven and earth, and in some lesser-known legends, Alcyone, the brightest star in the Pleiades, is considered a gateway to the spirit world." I nodded, not surprised by the coincidence. "Does your people have any legends about doors between worlds?" Dr. Kamaka looked at me strangely, then glanced around to ensure we were alone. "Actually, yes, we have a concept called puka, literally meaning a hole or a portal, where the boundary between realms becomes thin. My ancestors believed there were 7 main puka, corresponding to the 7 stars of Makali, the Hawaiian name for the Pleiades." Another alignment. I no longer doubted I was in the right place. "When can we begin observing?" I asked. "The telescope is aligned and ready," he replied. "The Pleiades are high in the sky. We can start now." Dr. Kamaka sat at the control console and began entering commands into the system. On the large screen before us, an image of the Pleiades appeared, not as we usually see it with the naked eye, a faint cluster of stars, but a sharp, detailed image of hundreds of young blue stars, all surrounded by delicate clouds of gas and dust, reflecting starlight like a cosmic mirror. "It's beautiful," I whispered. "Indeed," Dr. Kamaka agreed, "and now we will switch to spectroscopic mode." He pressed a button, and the image changed. Instead of the usual image of stars, we were now looking at a series of spectral lines, bands of color displaying the chemical composition of light. Dr. Kamaka adjusted the system to focus on Alcyone, the largest and brightest star. "This is the spectrum of Alcyone," he explained. "We can see clear hydrogen absorption lines, typical for a B-type star, but there are some anomalies we haven't been able to explain." He pointed to an area of the spectrum where there was a series of strange lines, not the usual absorption lines created by elements, but a complex pattern, almost structural. "We first detected these anomalies about 2 months ago," Dr. Kamaka continued. "Initially, we thought it was equipment error, but it appeared on all our telescopes, and other observatories on Mauna Kea also reported similar observations. 2 months ago, about the time I began my journey in Siberia, the time the first door opened." "Can you zoom in on that area?" I asked, pointing to the anomalous pattern. Dr. Kamaka nodded and adjusted the display. The area magnified, and I saw more clearly what was happening. These weren't just anomalous spectral lines, it was a symbol, a complex pattern encoded in the light itself from the star. "How strange," Dr. Kamaka whispered. "It almost looks like writing." "A message," I completed his sentence. "But that's impossible," he protested. "There cannot be writing in the natural spectrum of a star. It must be a physical phenomenon we don't yet understand." "Or a non-physical phenomenon," I said softly. I stared intently at the pattern. It looked strangely familiar, almost identical to the Yebiskiy symbol I had seen in the Navajo Valley, but more complex, as if it were an evolved, more complete version of the same symbol. Suddenly, the pattern on the screen changed, not due to any adjustment by Dr. Kamaka. It changed on its own, as if the light from the star was reacting to my presence. "What's happening?" Dr. Kamaka asked, staring at the screen in amazement. "I've never seen anything like this." The spectral pattern was moving, rotating, and reconstructing itself. The spectral lines shifted, merged, and rearranged until they formed an entirely new pattern. A symbol I immediately recognized as the 12th symbol, the final symbol, the symbol of the cosmos. And as I looked at it, I felt a shift in the air around me. The temperature in the room seemed to rise, the air grew thick, and the lights from the computers and screens began to flicker. "We're having a technical malfunction," Dr. Kamaka said, worry etched on his face. I've never seen the entire system behave so strangely. But I knew this wasn't a technical malfunction. This was reality's reaction to the appearance of the final symbol. The final door was opening. The ground beneath our feet began to shake gently. Initially, just a slight tremor, but it quickly grew stronger. "Earthquake," Dr. Kamaka said worriedly. "We should." He didn't have time to finish his sentence. The screens around us all went black, only to immediately flicker back on with a single image, the cosmic symbol, multiplied hundreds of times on every screen. Then the control room door suddenly swung open, and a blinding light poured in. The light was so intense I had to close my eyes and raise my hand to shield my face. When I could open my eyes again, I saw a figure standing in the doorway. Not human, but a being of pure light with eyes glowing like two stars. Anak Ammon, but not the Anak Ammon I had encountered in Lascaux Cave. This was his true form, a being of light, a primal Strassnania leader. "Yebiskiy," Anak Ammon's voice resonated, not as sound but as light and vibration. "You have gone too far. You do not understand the danger of what you are doing." Dr. Kamaka stood there, frozen in astonishment and fear. I placed my hand on his shoulder to reassure him, then stepped toward the light being. "I understand more than you think, Anak Ammon," I said. "I have seen the truth, not just your truth, but many truths. I have seen what you have done to this world, to humanity, and to me." "You see what Anai wants you to see," Anak Ammon replied. "They have poisoned your mind with lies. They do not want to liberate this world, they want to consume it." As Anak Ammon spoke, a wave of energy radiated from his light form, making the air vibrate and the screens explode. "I have seen your lies too," I retorted, keeping my voice calm. "I have met the Balancer. I have spoken with the Strasavati. I know there is another way, not your side, not Anai's side, but the path of balance." "Balance?" Anak Ammon laughed, a sound like shattering glass. "There can be no balance with Anai. They are the void. They are chaos. They will turn the physical world into an amorphous ocean of consciousness where there is no individual, no freedom, only a soulless collective mind." "Like what you did to me," I countered. "Turned me into your weapon, a prisoner in an eternal cycle of reincarnation, without memory, without choice." Anak Ammon's light flickered as if wavering. "We created you for a higher purpose, Yebiskiy to protect this world and countless others from destruction. By turning it into a prison? By dividing humanity, teaching them fear and hatred for each other?" I shook my head. "No more, Anak Ammon. I have seen the third path and I will follow it." I stepped toward the large screen where the cosmic symbol was still displayed. As I approached, it began to glow more intensely, reflecting Anak Ammon's own light. "No," Anak Ammon shouted, his voice filled with genuine alarm. "If you take that symbol, if you open the final door, you will break the last chain holding Anai back. They will flood into this world like a torrent, and everything we have built will be swept away." "Not if I create a new door," I replied. Not a door to open or close, but a door to transform, a door of balance. I placed my hand on the screen, and the cosmic symbol seemed to leap off the screen, floating in the air like a living hologram, glowing with its own energy. It flew toward me and touched my wrist, where it carved itself into my skin, becoming the 12th and final symbol. I felt a powerful surge of energy course through my body. The 12 symbols on my skin, from sacrifice to the cosmic symbol, simultaneously ignited, forming a network of light that surrounded me like armor. "It's too late, Anak Ammon," I said. "The circle is complete. I have all the symbols, and now I must return to where it all began. I must go to Lascaux Cave and create the Door of Balance." "I will not let you do that," Anak Ammon declared, his light intensifying, blindingly bright. "I created you, Yebiskiy. I can destroy you." He raised his hand, and a blinding white beam of light shot toward me. But instead of harming me, it was blocked by the network of light from the symbols on my body, dissipating into thousands of harmless tiny rays. "You no longer have power over me," I said. "I am no longer your weapon. I am the Sentinel of Balance." I turned to look at Dr. Kamaka, who still stood there in shock. "I'm sorry for dragging you into this, Doctor, but you have helped me more than you know. You helped me find the final symbol." Dr. Kamaka nodded weakly, still speechless. I turned back to face Anak Ammon. "It's time to end this war, not with the victory of one side or the other, but with peace, with balance." "You are naive, Yebiskiy," Anak Ammon replied, his voice cold. "There can be no peace with an eye. They will not stop until they consume everything." "Or perhaps it is you who does not understand them," I countered. "Perhaps you are too afraid of change, too clinging to your power, to see that there is another way." Before Anak Ammon could react, I focused on the power of the 12 symbols. They glowed brighter, forming a sphere of light around me. And then, with a silent explosion, I vanished from the Mauna Kea Observatory. When I opened my eyes, I was standing on another mountain peak, half a world away, Jordan, France, just a few kilometers from Lascaux Cave. I looked up at the night sky where the Pleiades, the Seven Sisters, twinkled. The central star, Alcyone, seemed brighter, as if sending a message meant only for me. The 12 symbols on my body still glowed faintly beneath my clothes. I felt their power flowing through my veins, not the power to destroy, but the power to create, to transform, to balance. The journey was almost over. Only one final mission remained. I had to enter Lascaux Cave once more. I had to face both Anak Ammon and Anai. And I had to create the Door of Balance. A door not to divide worlds, nor to erase boundaries, but to allow them to coexist in harmony. I began to descend the mountainside, heading toward the ancient cave, where it all began and where it would all begin again in an entirely new way. Marginal note, asterisk, I have completed the circle. 12 symbols, 12 doors, 12 aspects of reality. Anak Ammon fears what I am about to do, and I understand why, because it will end his power. But this is not about power. This is about balance, about finding the third path between order and chaos, between matter and consciousness, between individual and collective. And I believe that path exists. I have to believe it. Part 14, excerpt from infrared clip. Lascaux Cave, France, Lunar Base Secret Facility. Infrared security clip. Omicron 7 level. Recording time, undetermined. Location, far side of the moon, Lunar 51 area. Note, asterisk, if you are viewing this document, you have been authorized. Unauthorized disclosure will result in severe consequences. Lascaux Cave no longer exists. Or more precisely, the Lascaux Cave that the world knows, with its famous prehistoric paintings, protected by UNESCO, studied by scientists, that is not the real Lascaux Cave. It is merely a shell, a reflection of a deeper reality. The true Lascaux Cave lies in another space, another dimension not entirely of Earth, not entirely separate from it. And as I stepped into the normal cave entrance, with the 12 symbols glowing on my body, I felt the reality around me bend, twist, and then open. I emerged from a doorway, a real door made of shiny black metal, covered with glowing symbols, into an entirely different space. I stood in a colossal circular room with a ceiling soaring like a grand cathedral. But this was not a human construction. The walls seemed to be made of a living rock, glowing faintly with an eerie blue light. Carvings ran along the walls, forming complex symbols and patterns in ancient language older than any human tongue. And above, instead of a ceiling, was a giant window, revealing an incredible sight. The gray surface of the moon, and in the distance, a blue and white Earth hung suspended in the ink-black void of space. I am on the moon. Not exactly, a voice echoed behind me. I turned and saw Anak Ammon standing there, no longer the being of light as at Mauna Kea, but in a more familiar humanoid form, wearing a black cloak with a long, pointed, non-human face. This is not the moon as humans understand it, he explained. This is an intersection point where the physical moon meets other dimensions, an intermediate space. Lunar 51, I said, recalling the name from the clip. A secret base on the moon, a base that was never built. Anak Ammon and Anai have always existed. Time operates differently here, Yebiskiy, as you will soon understand. I looked around the room and realized I was not alone with Anak Ammon. Along the perimeter of the circular room, 7 other beings identical to him stood silently. 7 other Strasnania, all wearing black cloaks, all looking at me with unblinking eyes. And in the center of the room, the strangest structure. A column of light, or more accurately, a column of dense shadow, standing straight from floor to ceiling, opening into the cosmos. This shadow was not just the absence of light. It seemed to have substance, moving and swirling like a black liquid. Inai, I whispered, realizing what the column of shadow was. Yes, Anak Ammon nodded. They have waited for you, as have we. From the column of shadow, a voice, or perhaps thousands of voices, echoed in my mind. Yebiskiy, Sentinel, the Creator, we welcome you. This voice held no malice, no threat. Instead, it carried a strange familiarity, as if meeting an old friend again. We all know why you are here, Anak Ammon said. You have the 12 symbols, you wish to create the door of balance. And you will stop me, I asked, ready for a confrontation, but Anak Ammon shook his head. No, we will watch you do it. I frowned, looking from Anak Ammon to the column of shadow. I don't understand. Both factions tried to interfere with my journey, tried to pull me to your side, and now you will just watch me create the door. We want to see which path you will choose, the voice from the shadow replied. What will the door of balance you envision be like? Because things are not as simple as you think, Yebiskiy, Anak Ammon added. There are not just 2 sides in this war, not just 2 choices. I know, I said. There is a 3rd path, the path of balance. Anak Ammon smiled, a strange expression on his non-human face. No, there are countless paths, countless possibilities, and your decision will shape reality in ways that even we, who have existed since before humanity appeared, cannot predict. I looked back at the column of shadow. This is a test. This is a turning point, the voice from the shadow replied. A branching point in time and space. What you do here will create ripples far beyond what you can imagine. I looked down at my wrist, where the 12 symbols were glowing, each representing a door, an aspect of reality, a part of the journey I had undertaken. So what must I do? I asked. Anak Ammon pointed to the center of the room, where the floor had another deep circle. Step into the circle, focus on the 12 symbols, let them guide you. I walked toward the circle but stopped. Why should I trust you or Anai? Both have deceived me before. We have no choice but to trust you, Anak Ammon replied, his voice serious. By this point, the real power lies in your hands, Yebiskiy, not ours. I looked toward the column of shadow and felt the agreement from Anai. You are the creator, the collective voice echoed. We trust you to create a better world. I stepped into the circle. Immediately, I felt a shift, as if gravity had changed, pulling me not down, but outward, toward the countless realities I had seen on the map. The 12 symbols on my body began to glow brighter, so bright I had to close my eyes. I felt their energy flowing into me, through me, and then out of me, reaching across the multiverse. I saw everything. I felt everything. I saw Anak Ammon and the Strasnania in their true forms, not as enemies, not as invaders, but as desperate survivors from a dying universe, who had done everything they could to protect their new reality, even if that meant controlling and manipulating it. I saw Anai in their true nature, not as entities of the void, not as destroyers, but as a different form of consciousness, a different form of existence, seeking connection and harmony, even if that meant breaking down barriers and borders. I saw the Strasivati, the Balancer, and countless other factions and forces. All were part of a complex ecosystem of realities. All had their own perspectives and goals, all contributed to the larger picture. And I saw humanity, complex, contradictory, yet full of potential. A species both material and spiritual, both individual and collective, both order and chaos. A species that could be the bridge between all realities. And finally, I saw myself, not Alexei Volkov, not Yebiskiy, but an entity beyond names and identities. An entity capable of connecting all aspects of reality. With this understanding, I knew what to do. I focused on the 12 symbols, not as separate entities, but as parts of a whole. I imagined them merging, combining, forming a new symbol, the symbol of the balance door. Energy from the symbols erupted, forming a column of light from my body up to the cosmos above. Not the white light of Anak-Ammon, not the dense shadow of Anai, but a new kind of light. A polychromatic light containing every color imaginable and many colors the human mind cannot comprehend. In that column of light, a structure began to form. A door, but unlike any door I had seen before. It had no fixed shape, constantly changing, constantly transforming. Sometimes it resembled a circle, sometimes a square, sometimes a complex geometric form with no name in human language. This was the balance door, not a door to pass through, but a door to transform. A door that allowed realities to coexist without conflict, allowing opposing forces to coexist in harmony. "You have done it," Anak-Ammon whispered, his voice filled with astonishment. "The door has opened," the voice from the shadow echoed, also filled with surprise. But I knew this door was not to open or close, it was to transform. I focused even harder, pouring all my energy, all my will into the forming door. And as I did, I felt it begin to affect the surrounding reality. The walls between universes were no longer rigid, impenetrable. They became flexible, adaptable. Boundaries still existed, still protected the integrity of each reality. But they also allowed communication, sharing, understanding. Anak-Ammon and the Strassnania could still maintain their order. But not through control and imprisonment, but through guidance and protection. Anai could still share their collective consciousness, but not by consuming and dissolving, but by connecting and resonating. And humanity, along with countless other species on countless worlds, could freely explore their potential, unconstrained by Anak-Ammon's chains or consumed by Anai's collective consciousness. As the balance door was completed, I felt a change within myself. I was no longer just Alexei Volkov or Yebiskiy. I had become something more and less than both. I had become the Sentinel of Balance. The column of light from my body slowly receded, and the balance door stabilized in space, no longer a physical structure, but a fundamental principle of reality. I turned to look at Anak-Ammon and the column of shadow representing Anai. Both had changed, no longer separate, opposing entities, but different aspects of the same reality. "It is done," I said. "No," Anak-Ammon shook his head, but not in negation. "This is only the beginning, a new beginning," the voice from the shadow agreed, "for all of us." I looked up through the giant window where Earth hung suspended in space. From this distance, I couldn't see boundaries, couldn't see conflict. I only saw a beautiful blue and white world, full of life and potential. And now, that world, along with countless others, had a new future. A future not of control, not of chaos, but of balance. "What happens now?" I asked. "That is the biggest question, isn't it?" Anak-Ammon smiled. "And the answer is, we don't know. And that is the most wonderful thing about what you have done, Yebiskiy. You have created a future that even we, who have existed since the dawn of the universe, cannot predict. A future of countless possibilities," the voice from the shadow added. "A future where every being, every entity, every consciousness can choose its own path." I looked down at my hand. The 12 symbols had vanished. Instead, there was a new symbol, the symbol of the balance door. A symbol indescribable by language, incomprehensible by the ordinary mind. But I felt its meaning, the harmony of all things, the balance of all forces. "And what about me?" I asked. "I have completed my mission. I have created the balance door. Where do I go? What do I do now?" Anak-Ammon and the shadow looked at each other as if exchanging an unspoken thought. "That too is your choice, Yebiskiy," Anak-Ammon said. "You can stay here with us and become a new guardian. Not Strassnania, not Sentinel, but a guardian of balance. Or you can return to the human world," the voice from the shadow suggested. "Live as one of them, help them understand and adapt to this new reality." Or, Anak Ammon added, you can choose an entirely different path, a path that even we cannot imagine. I pondered the options. A part of me wanted to stay here in this intermediate space, where I could see and understand all realities. Another part wanted to return to Earth, live as Alexei Volkov, perhaps continue researching paranormal phenomena, but with a much deeper understanding. But there was a third path, a path I had created for myself. I choose not to choose, I said. Anak Ammon raised an eyebrow. Meaning, I choose all paths, I explained, and no path. I choose to become like the balance door, an entity not limited by a single reality, a single role. I will be the Sentinel of Balance, moving between worlds, between realities, helping to maintain the balance I have created. Anak Ammon nodded, a look of respect evident on his face. A choice worthy of a creator, and a choice we respect, the voice from the shadow agreed. I looked up at Earth one last time, then down at the new symbol on my hand. With a thought, I activated it, and a small door opened before me, a door leading everywhere and nowhere. We will meet again, I said to Anak Ammon and Anai, in another reality, another time. We will wait, Anak Ammon nodded. And we will remember, the voice from the shadow added. I stepped through the door into countless possibilities, countless realities, countless paths. Alexei Volkov's journey had ended. Yebiskiy's journey had ended, but the journey of the Sentinel of Balance had only just begun. Infrared clip end. Attached NASA report, an object was detected in Earth's orbit on August 13th. Its size and mass are undetermined because our instruments cannot measure it consistently. Sometimes it appears as large as an asteroid, sometimes as small as a regular satellite. It is unlike anything we have ever known. It is not a natural celestial body, but neither is it an artificial structure as we understand it. It seems to change shape, size, and even position in space without obeying normal physical laws. We have codenamed it the Equilibrium Gate. Astronomers around the world are observing it. Physicists are trying to understand it, but one thing is certain. Its appearance has changed everything. Strange dreams are being reported worldwide, encounters with inexplicable entities, moments when reality seems to bend, to shift, but strangely, no one seems afraid. Instead, there is a strange sense of hope, of potential, of possibility, as if we are stepping into a new era, an era of balance. Personal note from Dr. Kamaka, I still dream about that man, the one who came to the Mauna Kea Observatory on the night everything changed. He called himself Alexei Volkov, an astronomer from Moscow. But I know he was much more than that. Sometimes, looking up at the night sky, I imagine I see him, a figure standing among the stars, observing, maintaining the balance he created. If anyone finds this note, know that we are not alone in this universe, and that is the best thing that could ever happen. Marginal note, I have completed the circle. I have become the Sentinel of Balance, and now I walk between worlds, between realities, maintaining the harmony I created. Sometimes as Alexei, sometimes as Yebiskiy, sometimes as an entity beyond names and identities, but always as the observer, the protector, the connector. This journey has no end, and that is the most wonderful thing about it.